You must have been surprised. There are divorce papers on the table. I've been staying at my parents' house since yesterday. I'm not coming back until you visit me and apologize. Oh, I see. That's what you meant. Then you don't need to come back. I have nothing to apologize for. What? You're still acting like this after everything? That's it. I'm serious this time. I'm filing for divorce. We're already divorced. Hi, I'm Mia, a 30-year-old office worker. After college, I started working at a public company, and I've put a lot of effort into my career ever since. The reason I've been able to work so hard is because of the amazing people in my life. The most important one is my childhood friend, Sophie. Sophie and I met in junior high school. We were in the same badminton club and quickly became best friends. But we were also rivals, constantly pushing each other to be better. We stayed late after practice to train, and before tests, we'd study together and compete for the highest scores. We went to the same high school and later, the same university. We were inseparable and always striving to outdo each other in a friendly way. Sophie played a huge role in shaping who I am today. Even after we started working, we stayed in touch, sharing updates about our lives and motivating each other to keep pushing forward. Sophie followed her dream of studying abroad in Japan after university. She eventually landed a job there and built a life overseas. Ever since she was a kid, she had dreamed of living in another country. It's incredible to see her achieve that. She taught me that if you chase your dreams, opportunities will come your way. When we talk, her happiness and confidence inspire me to think about what I want for my own future. Another important person in my life is my husband, Adam. I met Adam when I was 24 during a group outing. He was a few years older than me and worked for a big company. He came across as thoughtful and kind, and we were both drawn to each other. After a few dates, we started a relationship, and a year later we got married. What made me fall for Adam was his support during a tough time in my career. Back then, I was overwhelmed at work. I felt stuck, unsure if I was doing the right thing. I was working hard but seeing no results, and it made me question myself. At the time, Adam, who was still my boyfriend, reassured me. Don't stress yourself out. You don't need to have it all figured out right now. Use these first few years to try new things and take risks. It's okay to mess up. Your coworkers and managers won't hold it against you. Just focus on what excites you and go for it. I'm not in your company, so maybe it's easy for me to say this, but I believe in you. Hearing those words made me feel so much better. I stopped putting so much pressure on myself and started enjoying my work more. Adam was happy to see me more confident and relaxed, and I realized that he brought out the best in me. That's when I knew I wanted to marry him. After we got married, Adam continued to be my biggest supporter. Whenever I struggled, he was always there to encourage me and remind me of my strength. Thanks to him, I never gave up on my goals and found real joy in my work. I've lived my life with the unwavering support of my best friend and my husband. Recently, all my hard work paid off. I was promoted to a higher position at work. I was so excited that I couldn't wait to tell Adam as soon as I got home. Adam, I did it. What happened? You look so excited, he said, glancing up from his phone. I'm going to be a section chief starting this spring. Oh really? He replied, sounding neutral. Yeah, it feels amazing to have my efforts finally recognized. Well, congratulations. Thank you. I even bought some steak to celebrate tonight. Let's have a special dinner, I said with a big smile. I was over the moon about my promotion, so I didn't notice right away, but Adam's behavior started to change after that day. At first, it was subtle. Then it became more obvious. I'm home, I said one evening. Welcome home, Adam replied flatly. Why are you coming home so late these days? He asked, frowning. I'm sorry, I explained. I was reviewing a report my team prepared. It took longer than expected. Well, hurry up and make dinner, he snapped. Huh? Oh yeah. Of course, I stammered, caught off guard. Adam used to help out with chores whenever he could. But lately, even when he came home earlier than me, he wouldn't lift a finger. Instead, he started criticizing me more often. Why do you always stay at work so late? He demanded one night. My responsibilities and workload have increased since I became a section chief, I said. That's not an excuse. Plenty of people in higher positions come home on time. You're just inefficient at your job, Mia. It takes you forever, so you have to work overtime. Maybe, I said quietly, but I'm really doing my best. Well, don't let your overtime affect your chores. I can't focus on my own work if you keep slacking at home. I'm sorry, I mumbled, feeling a lump in my throat. Adam had never spoken to me this way before. His words stung, and I couldn't understand why he was suddenly so cold. I didn't realize that my late hours at work were upsetting him this much. At that time, I still respected and cared deeply for my husband, Adam. I couldn't see that his harsh words were rooted in jealousy. Even so, work kept me incredibly busy, leaving me with little time or energy for anything else. Whenever I came home late, Adam's anger grew worse. Why can't you manage chores and work better? He'd snap. How can you even be a section chief if you can't multitask? His constant criticism made me doubt myself. I started feeling like I wasn't good enough. It all became too much to bear, so I decided to call my best friend, Sophie. Hey, Mia. How are you? Sophie asked cheerfully. Hi, Sophie. I don't know, I said, my voice trembling. Mia, every time I ask how you're doing, it's always something tough, huh? What's going on? Sophie always understood me better than anyone else. As soon as I heard her voice, I broke down in tears and told her everything. I shared how Adam was always hard on me, how he belittled me, and how I was stuck doing all the housework by myself. Sophie listened quietly and then said, Mia, I know you're always doing your best. Even though we live far apart, I can see how hard you're working. You became a section chief because of your dedication, and that's something to be proud of. Do you really think so? I asked, wiping away my tears. Absolutely, Sophie said. But the way Adam has been treating you lately, it sounds like jealousy to me. Jealousy? You think Adam is jealous of me? Does he hold a position higher than section chief at his job? No, he doesn't, I admitted hesitantly. Exactly. I know he works for a big company, but men can be sensitive about career success. Seeing you, someone younger, get promoted first might be hard for him to handle. Oh no, if that's the case, what should I do? Well, it's tricky. Maybe he'll feel better once he gets promoted too. Until then, you might need to be patient, Sophie suggested. I guess so. Thanks for listening, Sophie. You don't need to worry too much, though. I already feel better just talking to you. Call me anytime, Mia, Sophie said warmly, even if it's just to chat about silly things. Thanks, I'll do that, I said, smiling for the first time in days. That call helped me feel lighter, but Sophie's words about jealousy stuck with me. I decided to avoid mentioning work or how busy I was around Adam. Unfortunately, that didn't make things better. Adam's behavior worsened, and eventually he started trying to control me. One day, I was talking to Sophie on the phone during my day off. Adam walked into the room and abruptly ended the call. What are you doing? I asked, shocked. What am I doing? What are you doing? Adam shot back. Why are you wasting your time talking on the phone when there's so much to do? I wasn't being that loud, I said defensively. Don't talk back to me. You're the one who does whatever you want and ignores the chores. You're a bad wife. You're always lounging on the couch doing nothing, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. Why should I take all the blame? Because housework is the wife's job. If you can't handle it, then you deserve the blame, Adam said harshly. Why do you always look down on me? I asked, hurt. We're husband and wife. We're supposed to be equals. Equals? You and me. Don't be ridiculous, he scoffed. If you don't shape up and start being a better wife, I'll divorce you. Divorce? I asked, stunned. Yes, divorce. Get your act together, or it's over, Adam said before storming out of the room. I sat there in shock, staring at the door as it slammed shut. Slowly, I picked up my phone and messaged Sophie, apologizing for the sudden disconnection. Sophie had heard my husband yelling on the phone and immediately asked if I was okay. She could sense something was wrong. When I told her what Adam had said, she was shocked. That's way over the line. I can't believe he's talking about divorce so easily, Sophie said, disbelief in her voice. I felt the same way. His jealousy had become unbearable. From that moment on, any love I had for Adam started to fade. Then something happened that made all my remaining feelings for him disappear in an instant. I received an exciting message from Sophie. She was getting married. I was so happy for her and couldn't wait to celebrate her big day. A little while later, I got the invitation to the wedding. It would be held in Japan, where Sophie lived. Of course I was going to go. I had already requested time off from work, but I couldn't bring myself to tell Adam. I knew he'd be upset about it. But I had already booked the tickets. It was time to tell him. I nervously approached Adam and explained that I would be going to Japan for Sophie's wedding. As expected, he exploded. Are you serious? You can't even do the housework properly, and now you want to go abroad. It's not just a trip. It's my best friend's wedding, I replied, trying to stay calm. I don't care what it is. You're my wife. You should be home. If you go, I'll divorce you. Why are you always threatening me with divorce? I'm your wife, but that doesn't mean I can't leave the house for a while. I'll be back right after the wedding. You'll only be alone for a few days. No, you're not going. I've made up my mind, he shouted, cutting me off. Can't you at least try to be reasonable? I asked, frustrated. In a fit of anger, Adam stormed off to his room. That was when I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. From then on, I tried to avoid upsetting him. I quietly packed for the wedding and sent my luggage to my parents' house so Adam wouldn't find out. The day I was leaving for Japan, I stopped by my parents' house before heading to the airport. I was feeling relieved, thinking my plan had worked, and Adam still had no idea I was leaving. I arrived safely in Japan. As soon as I landed, I started getting messages from Adam. Then he called me right away. Hey, where are you? Why aren't you home yet? I'm in Japan, I said, trying to stay calm. What? He responded, shocked. I told you, I'm here for Sophie's wedding. I told you I didn't allow this. I don't need your permission, I said firmly. I'm serious, Mia. If you keep acting like this, I'll divorce you. I was about to tell him I was done with his threats, but just then, Sophie arrived at the airport to pick me up. I quickly told Adam I had to go and ended the call. After that, I muted his messages. I was finally free and happy to be with Sophie again. We spent the day sightseeing and had dinner together. The next day, I attended Sophie's beautiful wedding. She was glowing, and I couldn't have been happier for her. On my way back to the US, I felt content about how wonderful the wedding had been. But as soon as I got closer to home, the anxiety kicked in. I dreaded facing Adam again. When I opened the door to my house, I was relieved to see that Adam still wasn't home. But then my heart sank when I saw something on the table. It was the divorce papers. His part was already filled out. I realized then that Adam had been trying to force me into a corner, thinking this would threaten me into submission. But maybe he really wanted a divorce. Either way, it wasn't what I wanted, so I grabbed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left the house. I drove straight to my parents' place. They were shocked to see me come back with a big bag of things, but when I explained everything, they agreed that I should go ahead with a divorce. My parents filled out the witness form for me, and I filled in my part. I went to the municipal office to file the divorce papers. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, relaxing at my parents' house. But the next night, my phone rang. It was Adam. I was surprised since I thought he'd call sooner. I decided to answer. And when I did, he spoke to me in a condescending tone, almost like he was smirking. Were you surprised when you found the divorce papers on the table? I've been staying at my parents' house since yesterday. I'm not leaving until you come and apologize. I see. So that's what this is about. Well, you don't have to come back then, right? I don't have anything to apologize for. What? You're still acting like this after all this time. That's it. I'm seriously divorcing you. We're already divorced. What? I'm glad you already signed the papers. I was planning to leave you anyway when I got back. So now, we're strangers. Wait, you're kidding, right? Of course not. You're the one who put the divorce papers there. Oh no, that was just a threat. Come on. You think threatening me like that will make me more obedient? I need a break. Why do I have to be mistreated every day just to boost your fragile ego and pride? Just because you feel bad I got promoted before you? You're so pathetic, always making rude remarks. I had no idea you were so small-minded. Shut up. Don't try to act like you're in charge just because you got promoted. I'm not acting like I'm in charge. I'm just telling you the truth. You thought I was beneath you when we were dating and first married. You liked pretending to give me good advice, feeling proud of yourself. But now I see you for what you really are, jealous and full of pride. You probably didn't even realize it. Well, thanks to me, now you know. You're mocking me, aren't you? Are we done? I don't have time to argue with a stranger. I got a high position at work and am busy. I hung up. My ex-husband is probably furious right now. I never wanted to act superior, but after all the hurtful things he said, I had to say something to get under his skin. Later, I found out from mutual friends that he was still angry with me. He said, "I'll find someone more beautiful than her and be happy." So he started using a dating app. The woman he met turned out to be a scam artist. She took all his savings, millions of dollars, all at once. As expected, he was mentally crushed by it. Now he's low on confidence and gloomy every day. People are leaving him, and honestly, he brought it on himself. It was interesting to see what happens when someone loses their composure. Meanwhile, I've been working even harder. I'm now in charge of several big projects. Lena and I are still in touch, and I told her I'm planning to visit her in Japan for a long vacation. I'm going to keep working hard and show her how much I've grown. Jealous men are so pathetic, aren't they? It's sad that he thought he could control me with divorce papers. In the end, it's good that I left him behind. I can live independently, and next time, I'll find someone who doesn't have such a fragile ego.
Now that the troublesome situation has passed, we can relax and enjoy ourselves. He whispered these words to his niece's ear. The cause of the trouble was none other than his daughter. I had to leave home abruptly for a business trip. Despite my concerns about being away from my daughter for several days, John reassured me and bid me farewell, urging me to go in peace. My daughter and John usually spent quality time together, so I felt at ease leaving her in his care. However, recently, my daughter's behavior had taken a peculiar turn. In hindsight, I should have delved deeper into these feelings. "Mommy, don't go to work." My daughter clung to my leg, reluctant to let go. Unfortunately, I failed to recognize her desperate plea for help. Feeling like a failure as a mother, little did I know that John would lock my daughter in the storage room and embark on a trip with his niece. Forgiving John for the irreversible harm he caused to my daughter and niece is something I can never do. My name is Sherry. I married John the same year I became pregnant. Our daughter, Samantha, is now 5 years old. Our paths crossed through a common friend's introduction, a rather ordinary occurrence at the time. John, who had a fondness for children, worked at a toy manufacturing company, while I had just been chosen for a work project. Despite being engrossed in our respective careers, marriage was not on our minds. However, upon discovering my pregnancy with Samantha, everything changed. Having the baby meant taking a maternity leave and facing potential sidelining from the project. Witnessing similar situations at my workplace, I felt disheartened about my professional future. Yet John consoled me, expressing his willingness to quit his job and become a full-time stay-at-home dad. He had taken his current job with the hope that our future kids would play with the toys he helped create. John had already played a role in developing several products, some of which were already on the market. His dream was for me to fulfill my potential. These words prompted me to decide to have our daughter. I explained the situation to my company and returned to work 3 months after giving birth. Despite a slight gap, I managed to stay on the project, gaining valuable experience. Returning to work so soon after childbirth was challenging, but the thought of John and Samantha waiting at home fueled my determination. Currently leading a newly launched project, I strive to leave work on time by working remotely during weekdays. Although weekends, work, and business trips are sometimes inevitable, my daughter remains supportive, encouraging me with strong words. The concept of a full-time stay-at-home dad was not fully understood by society. But as a family, we harmonized our roles, leading to a happy life. One day, my sister-in-law discussed her divorce with us. Her husband, 10 years her senior, had frequent clashes due to differing opinions. The final straw was when he raised his hand against her. The divorce brought relief to my sister-in-law, who no longer had to witness her daughter Lily cry. Lily, an 11-year-old, had experienced the violence firsthand, prompting the decision to divorce. John, with his usual sense of humor, offered support, jokingly saying, "If you ever need anything, just say the word. I'm always home." Although it brought laughter, we nodded in agreement with John's sentiment. His words played a crucial role when John decided to quit his job and become a full-time stay-at-home dad. It's not about being a man or a woman these days. Whoever can do it should. Without my sister-in-law's support, we might not have maintained a good relationship with our in-laws. Our happiness owes part of its existence to her. Expressing gratitude, she mentioned considering a move to our neighborhood. We welcomed the idea, ensuring her that it wouldn't be a bother. Facing the need to leave the rental apartment shared with her ex-husband, she pondered returning to her in-laws' house an hour away. However, this would complicate her commute, and Lily would have to change schools. Fortunately, our house was within Lily's school district. They found a vacant apartment nearby and decided to move in. Suggesting that we look after Lily after school until her mother finished work, John and I agreed. Despite my sister-in-law's initial concerns about being overprotective, our proximity allowed us to keep a close eye on Lily, making John's role vital in the process. With Lily in our care during her mother's working hours, we began a new chapter in our family life. Living nearby, my daughter and her cousin quickly adapted to the routine. Initially, everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, my daughter's sudden resistance to being apart from me raised questions. Accustomed to seeing me off to work from a young age, I assumed she was comfortable with the routine. Was she feeling lonely, or was there another source of anxiety? Puzzled by her behavior, I attempted reassurance. "Mommy's just going to work. I'll be back tonight." Despite my attempts, my daughter clung tighter, revealing her inner turmoil. Concerned, I discussed the situation with John, who optimistically suggested that perhaps something happened at preschool. Assuring me that Lily's presence would provide comfort, John believed they might share secrets and alleviate any concerns my daughter had. Hoping this was the case, I refrained from pressing my daughter for answers. My daughter and Lily formed a close bond, with Lily treating her like a little sister. Observing their camaraderie, I believed my daughter's behavior was a passing phase. As my workload approached a lull, I planned to take leave and spend quality time with my daughter soon. However, unexpectedly, a business trip arose, requiring my absence for 5 days. Despite concerns, John's reassuring words encouraged me to proceed with the trip. Packed and ready, I left home 2 days later, with Lily visiting at the time. John, my daughter, and Lily saw me off with smiles. Little did I know that, at that very moment, events were unfolding at home beyond my expectations. John, exhibiting signs of departure, raised anxious questions from Lily. "Isn't Samantha coming with us?" John, to ease Lily's worries, fabricated a story about Samantha joining me on the business trip upon my return. Convinced by the tale, Lily accepted the explanation, and John directed my daughter to find a non-existent item in the storage room before my return. Samantha, believing her father's words, ventured into the storage room. Unbeknownst to her, John closed the door from the outside. Oblivious to the unfolding situation, my daughter did not notice the door being shut. John, muttering about the nuisance being gone, left with Lily for their trip, unknowingly leaving my daughter trapped in the storage room. Upon John's return 4 days later, he cheerfully chatted with a saddened Lily. Blissfully unaware of the events in his absence, John was shocked when he saw the storage shed and remembered he had left his daughter behind. Panicking, Lily rushed to the shed, where an unidentifiable liquid seeped out from under the door. John, attempting to stop Lily, confessed the truth about leaving Samantha behind. Lily, in shock, tried to open the shed door, only to be halted by John. The revelation left her devastated. The realization that Samantha was left in the shed, contrary to what John had assured her, prompted Lily to blame him. John, trembling and admitting his mistake, faced Lily's accusations. Witnessing this, I finally spoke up, questioning John's actions. My voice, cold and filled with anger, sent chills down my spine. Even my daughter, standing beside me, mirrored the intense emotions. John, turning around to face us, was frozen in shock. Sherry, contrary to John's astonishment, Lily burst into tears upon seeing Samantha. Hugging Samantha tightly, Lily expressed relief that she was safe. Samantha, avoiding eye contact with John, reciprocated Lily's embrace. I couldn't help but wonder about the emotional toll these events had taken on the innocent children. I stood protectively in front of my daughter Samantha and niece Lily, yet John showed faint concern. "I'm glad you're safe," he muttered towards Samantha. "Glad she's safe after you left her behind." "What are you saying now?" "Samantha said she wanted to be with you." "And why are you here, Sherry? Weren't you on a business trip? You were supposed to return tomorrow." "Oh, so you thought you'd be back before I got home. Could it be that you often leave Samantha like this when I'm away?" John fell silent at my words. His silence was more affirming than anything else. I've already heard the story from Samantha. I'll be hearing it from Lily as well. Turning to Lily, who was still embracing Samantha, she met my gaze firmly and nodded as if she had made a decision. The fact that I was able to rescue my daughter Samantha was a stroke of sheer luck. The thought of what could have happened if my business trip dates hadn't changed sends shivers down my spine. On the day I was supposed to leave, I indeed boarded the Amtrak. However, I received a sudden notification that the trip was canceled, so I got off the train mid-journey and returned home. Since the trip was called off, I could return home directly, arriving earlier than my usual time. Finally, I would have a chance to talk with Samantha. I took a taxi from the station, rushing home. As I got out of the taxi and approached the front door, I heard a voice calling, "Mommy." Thinking Samantha had seen me and was running towards me, I turned towards the voice, only to be shocked. Samantha's voice was coming from inside the storage shed. "Samantha?" In a panic, I'd opened the shed door to find my daughter there, drenched in sweat and sobbing uncontrollably. At her feet lay the burst remnants of a water-filled bouncy ball I had given her. This toy was developed by John when he was still working at the toy manufacturer. I had given it to Samantha, hoping to cheer her up when she first started showing signs of distress. Apparently, she panicked when she realized the door was shut, either throwing or stepping on the ball, causing it to burst. The liquid seeping out of the shed was from this ruptured bouncy ball. The floor was also scattered with Samantha's old clothes. "What happened? Why are you in here?" I hugged my crying daughter and asked her. What she told me then ignited a fury in me, the likes of which I had never felt before in my life. "Samantha said you asked her to look for my jewelry. She's deeply shocked both from being left behind and being locked in." "Locked in?" The door wasn't locked. I thought she would come out on her own. Being suddenly shut in is frightening even for adults. It's not surprising she panicked and couldn't open it. And I've heard about the usual situation. Now I finally understand why Samantha started acting out. My husband would have noticed the cause. After all, he was the cause of it. After we started looking after Lily, John began to favor her, neglecting Samantha. My daughter felt increasingly lonely as John paid attention only to Lily. But Samantha, caring for me and my busy schedule, could only express her feelings in such a way. It seems she also knew Lily was troubled by John's behavior. The photo of them whispering might have been taken while they were discussing this. Samantha really wanted to talk to me about Lily and hoped I could help in some way. However, Samantha didn't have the right words to accurately convey this. Unsure of how to express it to me, Samantha's words to me were hesitant. Yet she cared deeply for Lily, despite feeling lonely herself. What a kind-hearted child she is. After hearing from Samantha, I immediately called John, but he didn't answer. No matter how many times I called, usually he would call back right away, and it was unusual for him not to answer. Something was wrong. Believing this, I reached out to my sister-in-law. During this conversation, I learned a shocking fact. John had told her he was going on a trip with Samantha and Lily. John had contacted my sister-in-law as soon as he found out about my business trip. Sherry is going on a long business trip. During that time, I thought of taking Samantha and Lily on a trip because Samantha might feel lonely. What do you think? My sister-in-law was also busy with work and felt guilty for not being able to spend much time with Lily. John lied that Samantha and Lily wanted to go to a theme park, and my sister-in-law agreed, thinking it would be good for Lily. Of course, I hadn't heard anything about this plan from John. Hearing this, I felt as if the blood had drained from my face. Could John have been planning to leave Samantha alone at home during this trip? I informed my sister-in-law that Samantha was actually at home. When I mentioned that I couldn't reach John, she said she would try calling him herself, and we ended the call. I thought something was off and checked around the house, and I was shocked. There were lots of prepared meals in the fridge, and the water heater for the bath was left on. Could it be that he prepared all this so Samantha could stay alone? That is, John had planned to leave our 5-year-old daughter alone for 4 days with just these arrangements. My sister-in-law managed to reach John, who was apparently at the theme park with Lily, and casually said, "I'll have to hang up. Our turn for the attraction is coming." She also received pictures of Lily alone at the park, confirming Lily's safety. Angry yet relieved about Lily's safety, my sister-in-law and I decided to wait for John and Lily's return. John, perhaps as an alibi, had sent me a picture of Samantha and Lily, which must have been taken previously at our house. My sister-in-law received photos of Lily playing at the theme park. There was even a fake story of the two having fun together to pretend for it. And so John, believing he had fooled us, returned home in high spirits, having completely forgotten about the daughter he left behind. Why did my husband want to go on a trip with only his niece so desperately? Why John wanted to go on a trip only with Lily was beyond understanding. His affection for his niece was one thing, but his actions were abnormal. I wasn't the only one who thought so. Really? What were you thinking? Leaving your own daughter behind to go on a trip with your niece? That's abnormal, sis. Why are you here? I've heard everything from Cher. My sister-in-law burst in out of breath, likely having run here straight from work. Seeing her, Lily left Samantha and ran to her aunt. "Mom, Lily, I'm sorry." Then, for the first time, Lily told us everything about what my husband had done. As soon as we started looking after Lily, John began to pay attention only to her. According to what Samantha told me, it appeared so to Samantha. But in reality, it was more distressing for Lily. John had an unusual obsession with taking photos of Lily. At first, Lily agreed to John's request for photos, believing they were to be sent to her mother, and she smiled for the camera. However, over time, John's behavior began to escalate. He started making specific demands for poses, and Lily began to feel uncomfortable. But when Lily once refused and said no, John threatened her, saying he would tell her mother, making it seem like he was blaming Lily for not complying. "Lily is a naughty girl for not listening. Maybe I should tell your mom that we can't look after you anymore. She would surely be troubled then." Manipulating Lily's desire not to upset her mom, John continued to take her pictures, and eventually he took her on a trip, just the two of them. I really didn't want to go on the trip. It was creepy when he held my hand. "Hey, Lily, that's not true, right? You used to be happy with me, asking me to pick you up." Hearing this, my sister-in-law yelled, "How old was she, you're talking?" and hugged Lily tightly again. Lily, like Samantha, had been enduring John's behavior, not wanting to worry her aunt, and John had misunderstood this as Lily being fond of him. My sister-in-law tearfully apologized to Lily for not sensing the danger and agreeing to the trip so casually. She regretted her complacency for always having John look after Lily. "I'm sorry, Lily. If only I had been more careful." Lily shook her head in her mother's arms, said in a trembling voice that she never wanted to see John again. John began to panic pathetically at this. "Don't say that, Lily. I just wanted to show you affection. Stay away from Lily from now on." But then my sister-in-law demanded he delete the photos and snatched his phone from him. In his panicked state, however, upon seeing the photo folder, she was lost for words. There was an abnormal amount of photos of Lily saved. Lily's expressions in the photos seemed like forced smiles, but it was clear she was frightened. In retrospect, all the photos John sent never had Lily looking directly at the camera. John must have noticed the change in Lily's expressions too. That's why John only sent photos where Lily's expressions weren't clear, yet he let his desires run wild and took Lily away. Disgusting. I felt nauseated by John's abnormal behavior. My sister-in-law, holding the phone tightly, seemed frozen in place. We both shielded our daughters behind us, confronting John. There was no way I could forgive him for leaving Samantha behind, and I didn't want him near our daughters ever again. All feelings of affection had vanished in an instant. It's not like that. Listen to me. I love Lily, and of course, I love Samantha too. John continued to make excuses, only further frightening Samantha and Lily. I presented him with the divorce papers I had prepared during his trip, gathered our belongings, took Samantha, and left the house. I couldn't bear to share the same air with him for another moment. My sister-in-law and Lily followed us out. All that followed was my husband's sad screams. Afterward, I took my sister-in-law and Lily to their parents' house and informed them about John's behavior. When I mentioned leaving him with the divorce papers, my in-laws promised to handle everything from there. They assured us they would prevent John from approaching us again. Lily finally seemed to find some peace upon hearing their words. My sister-in-law and Lily decided to stay with my in-laws for the time being, planning to sort out work and school later. Though it likely meant Lily would have to change schools, we couldn't discount the possibility of John lurking around her school route. Samantha and I decided to return to my parents' home too. During John's trip, I had been managing work, household chores, and childcare alone. Thankfully, Samantha was a resilient child, and I felt confident that we could manage well on our own. Living without John, just the two of us, seemed entirely feasible. Those hellish 4 days indeed contributed to my newfound confidence. For a while, we'll live at my parents' house, grateful for their kindness. But I plan to move closer to my workplace before Samantha starts elementary school. We started our new lives, but John was still stuck in the past. Thanks to my in-laws, I was able to finalize the divorce from John without ever having to see him. But he continued to call afterward and even showed up at my parents' house, despite being cut off by my in-laws from any contact with me, my daughter, and the residents of his parents' home. John pathetically tried to seek reconciliation. I can't imagine a life without Sher and Samantha. His words only instilled fear in me. I asked my parents to contact the police, who came and took away John, who was screaming at our doorstep. He was served a restraining order by the police and finally seemed to understand he was alone. All this destruction was his doing, and it was too late for regrets. I wondered how John, having been a stay-at-home dad, planned to live since then, but that was no longer my concern. Samantha had been down for a while after the incident, but she's finally starting to smile again. Though divorced from John, we still keep in touch with my sister-in-law and Lily, and their smiles are returning too, to overwrite the traumatic memories of the theme park with Lily. We are planning a trip there, just the four of us. I'm looking forward to creating many happy memories for Samantha and Lily.
I remember a time when I felt truly content with my life, earning a decent income and managing things well. That sense of stability was shattered one day when my credit card company called to alert me about a shocking $91,000 charge that I didn't recognize at all. Panic set in as I immediately halted the payment. At the same time, my husband Jason, who was traveling, kept calling me. Despite the chaos swirling around me, I took charge of the situation. At 31, I had stepped into a managerial role at my company, while Jason, my college sweetheart, was also 31, and we had been happily married for 2 years. While many of our friends chose to leave their jobs after getting married, I chose to stay in mine, earning more than Jason, which occasionally made me worry about our future, especially considering the instability of his income. We maintained our financial independence, managing our own money and sharing household expenses equally. This arrangement gave me the freedom to spend my leftover income as I pleased, a situation I usually found satisfying since we both worked and our life together felt harmonious. However, recently, while riding home on the train, I had a nagging feeling that I might have overspent a bit. As I glanced at a debit alert on my phone, I thought about checking for any unused subscriptions that might still be charging me. But that thought quickly faded as I struggled to remember the password to my credit card portal. Finding the motivation to sort this out was proving tough, especially since reaching the help center felt like an uphill battle. They were only available from 8:00 a.m. to 6:00 p.m. on weekdays, exactly when most working people are busy. The long wait times during lunch hours didn't help either. Still, I felt a small sense of reassurance knowing that if there were significant issues, like a charge over $40,000, the call center would reach out to me. This reliance on the system made me a bit complacent about contacting them myself. Meanwhile, online shopping became a brief escape from work-related stresses. When I opened a newly delivered package, a surge of excitement washed over me, but it quickly faded as I stepped into our living room. The sight that greeted me instantly shifted my mood from good to bad. Socks scattered on the floor, empty cans littering the table, and a random phone and sweater thrown carelessly on the couch. There was Jason, lounging in his sweatshirt, seemingly oblivious to the mess. His tendency to leave things in disarray often felt like he was deliberately contributing to the chaos at home. I aimed my phone at the couch and said, half joking, half exasperated, "Hey, socks and empty cans. That's what I come home to? It's not that hard to clean up a bit or even make dinner if you're home before me." He coolly replied, "If you get home early, why don't you clean the house? Don't be so mad about it." His words stung a bit. "I was tired too when I got home," I retorted, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "If you're not going to help clean, maybe you should consider whether you prefer working or doing chores." "Please just drop it," he said, not once but twice, signaling his annoyance without really understanding the weight of my words. I shot him a stern look, but he was too engrossed in his phone to notice my frustration. It felt unfair that I was shouldering a heavier load of chores on top of my work responsibilities. Was I being unreasonable for feeling this way? I wasn't sure what to think, but I feared that confronting him might only push Jason to become more indifferent about the upkeep of our home. Surprisingly, after our exchange, something changed. My husband started coming home late, even on days when I arrived early. It seemed he had decided to put in extra hours at work, perhaps as a way to address the imbalance in our responsibilities. On a particularly good day, I threw myself into my chores with more energy than usual. Jason had been really busy lately, which meant the housekeeping duties had mostly fallen on me. I hadn't given it much thought until I found myself cleaning his room, a place he hadn't tidied up in quite some time. As I entered, I was met with the familiar sight of empty bottles and cans strewn everywhere, even on the bed. Amid the clutter, something caught my eye. A package, elegantly wrapped in gift paper, lying quietly on the floor. Leaning in closer, I recognized the branding. It was from my favorite store. A flicker of excitement surged through me as I remembered my birthday was just around the corner. Could this be a surprise gift from Jason? Despite my curiosity, I decided to respect the surprise and left the package untouched. However, as my birthday arrived, the gift never materialized. As the day progressed, I casually asked Jason, "Do you know what today is?" "Oh right, it's your birthday," he replied nonchalantly. "Did you forget?" I pressed, hoping for a hint about the surprise I had seen earlier. "No, I remember," he said. "Aren't you happy with what I gave you last year? You know you're old enough not to need constant surprises." His words, so casually delivered, stung. He turned and went back to his room, leaving me puzzled and hurt. That mysterious box had sparked a glimmer of hope, but now it just filled me with unease. Then, just when I thought the day couldn't get any stranger, he announced, "I've got to go on a work trip abroad next week." This news was unexpected, a business trip to another country. I repeated, incredulous, "Since when does your job involve international travel? You've never even been on a business trip outside the state." He simply replied, "They just gave me this assignment." The whole situation felt increasingly strange. What was really going on? I had been feeling quite accomplished lately and believed I deserved some recognition. "You should trust me," my husband had said, but his words were hard to take seriously after discovering that mysterious gift-wrapped box in his room just before he left for his so-called business trip. After waving him off that early morning, my curiosity got the better of me. I searched under the bed where I had seen the box, but it was gone. Doubts began to gnaw at me. This wasn't just a regular business trip, was it? With that uneasy thought lingering, I dragged myself to work, but focusing was nearly impossible. Several times, my hands stopped moving as my mind replayed recent events over and over. "Hey, are you okay? You seem out of it today," a coworker inquired. "Oh yeah, I just didn't get enough sleep," I replied, trying to brush it off with a light-hearted excuse. Just then, my phone vibrated sharply, displaying a strange number on the screen. Normally, I would ignore such calls, but something inside me urged me to answer this time. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside to talk. It was the credit card company's call center on the line. As I listened, a flurry of thoughts raced through my mind about my husband, our recent issues, and the necessity of sharing my password. Then the representative's words cut through my confusion. "This is from our debt protection service. It seems there has been a charge exceeding $40,000 on your account," the voice explained calmly. I was stunned, a mix of disbelief and concern washing over me. What on earth was going on? The conversation intensified when she dropped another bombshell. Yes, there was a charge for $91,000. "That's impossible. Wait a second." I gasped, my heart racing, and dashed back to my desk, rifling through my wallet only to discover that my credit card was missing. That was the card I had intended to bring with me. "Pardon me, can you please halt that transaction?" I asked urgently, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Yes, it's still pending, so we can stop it," the operator assured me. A wave of relief washed over me. "And please, can you handle the stolen card issue immediately?" "I don't have it with me," I added. "Yes, sir, I'll take care of it right away," she responded. Although the situation was partially resolved, the adrenaline continued to course through my veins. I hung up, my heart still pounding. "I'm sorry, but I'm not in the right state to work. I need to leave early. It seems my credit card was stolen and almost misused, and I have a lot to sort out," I explained to my boss, who understood and allowed me to leave. I caught the train quickly, and as I checked my phone, I saw countless missed calls from my husband. It felt as though he was trying to confess something. I rushed home, threw off my shoes, dropped my bag, and headed straight for my husband's office. His desk was cluttered, but what caught my eye was his search history: luxury cruises and travel plans for two. These were definitely not work-related, and I hadn't been invited to any such event. The so-called business trip was clearly a cover for something else. My heart sank as I grasped the implications. Scrolling through my old emails for any clues, I noticed a name that stood out. "Billy, what the heck is this?" I muttered, my anger rising. I wanted to slam the keyboard in frustration, but instead, I forced myself to look for concrete proof of whatever was happening. My phone kept ringing incessantly as I pieced everything together. "Oh my God, just stop," I groaned, overwhelmed by the betrayal and chaos unfolding before me. In the turmoil, I decided to use the password given by the call center to check my credit card transaction history. I logged into my account and began scrolling through the records, my disbelief growing with each entry. There it was, a transaction for an expensive handbag that caught my eye. The pieces suddenly clicked. Jason had used my credit card to indulge his mistress, Olivia, and even funded a so-called business trip abroad. The realization left me stunned. I had ignored several calls, but now, gathering all my courage, I finally answered the phone. "You finally picked up. I tried so many times," Jason said, his voice anxious. He immediately launched into a discussion about the credit card. "Who's the card for?" I asked pointedly. He hesitated before responding. "You mean whose card?" "Well, it's easier to use a card than cash abroad, especially on work trips." "Work trips? Or do you mean the luxury cruise and getaway with Olivia?" I countered sharply. He tried to deflect. "Why are you asking about the cruise? That was for business entertainment, a fun time. And was the designer bag for Olivia? Are you seriously trying to justify this by pretending you don't know what's going on?" I pressed, my voice steady but filled with pain. My husband faltered, the weight of the confrontation sinking in. I understand, he repeated, desperation lacing his voice as he grasped for excuses. "I know everything," I stated clearly. "You tried to spend $91,000 on a luxury cruise and a vacation package for couples. You've been using my credit card to lavish Olivia with gifts." After a pause, he finally admitted, "I'm sorry, I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't come home until you reactivate the credit card." His plea hung in the air, absurd and almost pitiful. Do you really think an apology and admission are enough to make all of this go away? I asked, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. The conversation had shifted irrevocably from mundane marital grievances to a stark, painful reckoning. Feeling utterly betrayed, I told my husband, "Please spend the rest of your life at your resort," and hung up before he could respond. Almost immediately, my phone began buzzing nonstop. The incessant ringing drove me to the edge, prompting me to turn off the device to escape the noise. Soon after, an email notification popped up, informing me that my husband's return flight was scheduled for noon, 5 days later. I seized this opportunity to get my affairs in order, determined to resolve everything before he set foot back home. The next day, I began clearing out all his belongings from the house. By the second day, I had gathered the courage to tell my in-laws about everything that had happened, showing them the proof of his infidelity and financial misdeeds. They were shocked and deeply apologetic. By the end of our conversation, they agreed to support me in pursuing a divorce, promising to ensure I would receive $2 million in alimony and vowing to recover the funds my husband had frivolously spent. As the day of my husband's return approached, I received a call from my in-laws in the early evening, confirming they had safely filed the divorce papers. Surprisingly, my soon-to-be ex-husband had only taken a credit card with him, leaving our other finances untouched. However, the woman he was with had given him $91,000. Enraged by the unfolding events, she changed her flight, departing for Singapore before him without his knowledge. I couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't just taken his plane ticket and visa, leaving him stranded. While pondering this, I learned from my in-laws that when my ex-husband returned to Singapore, he found the house empty and his connection to me severed, with all his calls going straight to voicemail. In a desperate attempt to find refuge, he went to my in-laws' house, where he faced serious repercussions for his actions. After everything that had unfolded, the final step was filing the divorce papers. My ex-husband had dug himself deeper into trouble, and it didn't stop with our separation. The woman he had been seeing was now demanding he return the $91,000 she had given him. My in-laws told me that after he repaid her, they imposed strict conditions on him, almost as if he were back in high school. He was essentially under house arrest with a 15-hour curfew and his every move monitored by his own family, ensuring he paid off all the money he owed. Amidst all this, I took legal action myself, filing a $115,000 claim against the other woman involved in the affair. With help from my in-laws, I gathered the necessary information to pursue her financially. Once I did, it felt like the last piece of this painful puzzle was finally falling into place. It was a long and exhausting process, but when the claim went through, I felt a sense of closure. The legal matters had been resolved, and it was time for me to focus on moving forward. The next day at work, my colleagues and bosses welcomed me back with surprising warmth and concern. Many of them had heard about my situation, and their kindness was palpable. "Are you okay? If you want to talk about anything, I'm here," one of my colleagues offered gently. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. I replied with a grateful smile, "Thank you, I'm doing all right. Just trying to get back into the swing of things. Maybe we can grab a drink after work. I'd appreciate the company." It felt good to make plans and look forward to simple pleasures like a night out with friends. That evening, as we gathered at a local bar, the camaraderie was soothing. We shared stories and laughs, and although the shadow of recent events lingered, it was overshadowed by the immediate warmth of friendly faces. With each sip of my beer, the bitterness of the past few months began to dissolve slightly. I poured out my heart about the ordeal, and my colleagues listened empathetically. "I'm just looking forward to putting all of this behind me," I confessed as the evening wound down. "I think I'm ready to focus on the positives that the future holds." They raised their glasses in silent acknowledgement of my resilience. "To new beginnings," they echoed. As I left the bar that night, a sense of closure mingled with newfound hope. The support of my work community had boosted my spirits, and I felt a deep appreciation for their presence in my life. It reminded me that even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartache, the kindness of others could light the way forward. Looking ahead, I felt a cautious optimism. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still mine to shape. With the legal matters settled and my boundaries firmly redrawn, I was slowly rebuilding the sense of normalcy. The path ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but I felt prepared to face them, bolstered by the support of friends and a renewed sense of self. Indeed, it seemed that better days were on the horizon. I still remember that rainy Tuesday morning when my world fell apart. After 8 years of marriage, I came home from my night shift at the local diner to find the locks changed and my belongings in garbage bags on the front porch. My hands trembled as I called my husband David, only to hear his cold voice. "It's over, Sarah. I've moved on. Don't try to come back." I stood there, rain soaking through my waitress uniform, staring at the house we bought together. Well, the house I bought, technically, my inheritance from my beloved grandfather, had paid for the down payment, but David's name was on all the paperwork. I trusted him completely when he said it was easier that way with his credit score. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzed again. A text notification from our joint bank account. Balance, $0. 8 years of savings gone. My separate account, also emptied. He'd had access to everything because I'd trusted him. Because I believed in our marriage. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. With nowhere else to go, I loaded what I could into my old Honda Civic, the only thing still in my name, and drove to my mother-in-law Patricia's house. Maybe there had been some mistake. Maybe she could help me understand what was happening. I should have known better. Patricia opened her door wearing her signature pearl necklace and disapproving frown. Behind her, I could see David's sister Amanda smirking. Well, Patricia said, looking down her nose at my wet, bedraggled appearance. "I suppose you're here to beg for money now that David's finally seen sense." "Patricia, please," my voice cracked. "I don't understand what's happening. Everything's gone. The house, our savings." "Oh, honey," she laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Did you really think someone like David would stay with a waitress forever? He's finally moving up in the world, and he needs someone more suitable." She adjusted her designer watch. "Though I must say, you lasted longer than I expected. Most gold diggers would have shown their true colors years ago." "Gold digger?" I whispered, stunned. "I paid for our house. I supported him through his MBA. "With your grandfather's money," Amanda chimed in. "Which you've been lording over David for years. Well, now he's paid you back. Guess you'll have to find another rich old man to mooch off of." I stood there, rain mixing with my tears, as 8 years of memories rewrote themselves in my mind. All those family dinners where they'd subtly mocked my job. The way they'd dismissed my contribution to David's success. How they'd never accepted me, the poor girl from the wrong side of town who dared to marry into their precious family. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice stronger now. "Where's David?" "On his honeymoon," Patricia said with a cruel smile. "With Jessica. You remember her? His new executive assistant. They've been seeing each other for months. She comes from a good family, you know. She'll be much better at supporting David's career than you ever were." The world spun around me. Jessica. The woman he'd hired 6 months ago, who he'd insisted on working late with so often, who'd smiled sweetly at me at the company Christmas party while apparently sleeping with my husband. "You knew." I realized, looking between Patricia and Amanda. "You all knew he was cheating." "Of course we knew," Amanda rolled her eyes. "We helped him plan everything. Jessica's father is on the board of David's company. This marriage will do wonders for his career. Unlike you, who's been holding him back with your embarrassing little waitress job." "Now," Patricia said, reaching for her door, "I suggest you leave before I call the police. And don't bother trying to fight this in court. Our family lawyer has everything handled. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get nothing." The door slammed in my face, leaving me alone in the rain once again. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, too shocked and broken to even cry. The next day, I tried to check into a cheap motel, only to find my credit cards canceled. My phone was next. Apparently, it had been on David's plan. Within 48 hours, I had nothing but my car, the clothes in my garbage bags, and $237 in cash. I managed to find a bed at the local women's shelter. The irony wasn't lost on me. I volunteered here for years, never imagining I'd end up staying here myself. The shelter director, Grace, remembered me from my volunteer days and gave me a private room usually reserved for emergency cases. "You're in shock, Sarah," she said gently, bringing me a cup of tea. "But you're stronger than you know, and when you're ready, we'll help you fight back." I didn't believe her then. How could I fight back? David had taken everything, planned it all perfectly. He had his family's money, their lawyers, their connections. I was just a waitress with a worthless degree in social work, trying to make ends meet while supporting my husband's dreams. But Grace was right about one thing. I was in shock, so much so that I almost missed the most important detail of all. A detail that would change everything. It happened 3 days into my stay at the shelter. I was helping in the shelter's kitchen. I couldn't afford to pay for my stay, but I could at least cook when I heard excited whispers from the front office. The CEO of Montgomery Industries is here. What's Alexander Montgomery doing at our shelter? I heard he's doing a series of surprise visits to local charities. I froze, nearly dropping the pot I was holding. Montgomery Industries, David's company, the place he'd worked his way up to middle management, always complaining that he deserved more recognition, faster promotions. I'd never met anyone from his work. He'd always said I wouldn't fit in at corporate events. But I knew about Alexander Montgomery. Everyone in town did. The brilliant young CEO who'd taken over his father's company 5 years ago and transformed it into a tech giant. The businessman who put our small city on the map. The man who, if the gossip was true, had no patience for dishonesty or corruption in his company. Before I could decide whether to hide in the kitchen, Grace came rushing in. "Sarah, Mr. Montgomery is asking to speak with all our residents. He's making a large donation and wants to hear their stories firsthand. Would you be comfortable joining the group?" I looked down at my shelter-provided clothes, touched my unwashed hair. I don't know, Grace. I'm not really presentable." "Nonsense," she said firmly. "You're one of us now, and your story deserves to be heard." So that's how I found myself sitting in a circle with 15 other shelter residents, facing Alexander Montgomery himself. He wasn't what I expected. Younger than I'd imagined, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No fancy suit, no arrogant attitude. He listened intently to each woman's story, asking thoughtful questions, taking notes. Then it was my turn. "I'm Sarah," I said quietly. "I'm here because my husband emptied our accounts and changed the locks while I was at work. He works for your company, actually." Alexander Montgomery's head snapped up, his pen freezing mid-note. "What did you say?" I couldn't stop now. The whole story poured out. The 8 years of marriage, supporting David through his MBA, buying our house with my inheritance, discovering his affair with his executive assistant, his family's cruel dismissal. "He's David Chen." I finished, my voice barely a whisper. "In middle management, he just married Jessica Williams. Her father is on your board." The room was dead silent. Alexander Montgomery's face had gone completely still, his eyes intense. "David Chen," he repeated slowly. "The one who's been pushing for a senior director position, who's been claiming his wife is fully supportive of his career moves." I laughed bitterly. Supportive? I didn't even know he was divorcing me until I found my belongings in garbage bags. "Grace," Alexander said suddenly, standing up. "May I use your office for a moment? Mrs. Chen and I need to have a private conversation." "It's Ms. Miller now," I corrected quietly. "I'm going back to my maiden name." He nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. "Ms. Miller, then. Please, come with me." As I followed him to Grace's office, I had no idea that this conversation would change everything. That within 24 hours, David's perfectly planned new life would begin to crumble. And it would all start with 5 simple words from Alexander Montgomery. "I've been looking for you." I followed Alexander Montgomery into Grace's small office, my heart pounding. He closed the door and turned to face me, his expression intense. "5 years ago," he said, "did you write a business proposal for a corporate-sponsored chain of community resource centers?" My mouth fell open. "How did you?" "It crossed my desk when I first became CEO," he continued. "Brilliant concept. Combining job training, childcare, and social services in economically disadvantaged areas. The financial projections were sound. The community impact analysis thorough. But when I tried to contact the author, Sarah Miller, she vanished. The email bounced back, the phone number was disconnected. I sank into a chair, memories flooding back. That was right after I married David. He said the proposal was too amateur, that it would embarrass him at work. He made me take it down from all the submission portals. Said I should focus on supporting his career instead. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Do you know what happened to that proposal, Ms. Miller?" "Nothing, because your husband buried it. He accessed the company submission system using his credentials and withdrew it without your knowledge." We found the digital trail during a system audit last year. We couldn't locate you. What? My voice shook. But why? Because David Chen has been taking credit for other people's work for years. We've suspected, but couldn't prove it. He's very careful. Very manipulative. Alexander sat on the edge of Grace's desk. The proposal's withdrawal caught our attention because it was exceptional. I've been looking for its author ever since. Tears filled my eyes. All those nights I'd worked on that proposal, dreaming of making a difference. All while David was apparently sabotaging me. There's more, Alexander said gently. 2 months ago, David presented a modified version of your proposal to the board. Claimed it was his original work, part of his bid for the senior director position. Jessica's father has been championing him for the role. A bitter laugh escaped me. So that's why he chose now to leave. He finally found a way to use my work for his advancement. Ms. Miller, Sarah. Alexander leaned forward. I'd like to offer you a job. As director of our new Community Impact Division. Your original proposal will be the foundation, but you'll have full resources to expand it. Starting salary is $250,000, plus benefits and stock options. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. But I'm just a waitress. No, he said firmly. You're a brilliant strategist who's been systematically undermined by an abusive husband. That ends today. He pulled out his phone. With your permission, I'd like to call our legal team. David Chen committed corporate fraud by stealing and misrepresenting your work. That's grounds for immediate termination. My head spun. But his new wife, her father. Board member or not, fraud is fraud. And something tells me Mr. Williams won't be so supportive once he learns the truth about his new son-in-law. Everything moved quickly after that. Alexander's legal team arrived within the hour. They took my statement, gathered evidence. By morning, the truth about David's fraud was exposed. He was fired publicly, his corporate accounts frozen. Jessica's father, horrified by the scandal, immediately annulled their marriage. I wasn't there when it happened, but Amanda later told me in a desperate attempt to reconcile once she realized I was now a company director, that David and Jessica returned early from their honeymoon to find their keycards deactivated and security waiting. How dare you? David had apparently shouted at Alexander in the lobby. Do you know who my new father-in-law is? Was, Alexander corrected calmly. The marriage has been annulled, and Mr. Williams sends his regards, along with a recommendation that you find employment far, far away from our industry. That's when David saw me standing beside Alexander in a designer suit, a gift from the company's stylist. His face went white. Sarah? What are you doing here? Taking back what's mine, I said calmly. The proposal you stole, it's being implemented. The career you tried to destroy, it's flourishing. The woman you discarded, she's your new boss's right hand. Patricia and Amanda tried damage control, of course. Suddenly they were calling constantly, leaving tearful voicemails about family loyalty. But I had a new family now, the incredible team at Montgomery Industries, who welcomed my ideas and valued my contributions. The women's shelter where I'd stay became the pilot location for our first community resource center. Grace joined as program director. Within a year, we'd opened 10 more centers across the state. David, last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst in a small firm 3 states away. Jessica married a wealthy developer, and Patricia loves to complain about how her new daughter-in-law married down. As for me, well, that's another story. One that started with late nights working on center proposals with Alexander, strategy sessions that turned into dinner discussions, meetings that lingered long after the agenda was complete. I'm not him, Alexander said one evening as we watched the sunset from his office. I'll never try to dim your light. I know, I replied, because I did know. I learned the difference between someone who wants to possess you and someone who wants to see you soar. 2 years after that rainy day when my world fell apart, I stood in a grand ballroom of the Montgomery Industries headquarters. Hundreds of employees and community members gathered to celebrate the opening of our 15th resource center. And now, the MC announced, please welcome our Community Impact Director and newest board member, Mrs. Sarah Montgomery. As I took the podium, my wedding ring catching the light, nothing flashy. Alexander knows I prefer elegant simplicity. I saw my old mother-in-law in the crowd. Patricia had wrangled an invitation through a business contact, no doubt hoping to reconcile now that I'd married up. But I wasn't the same woman she dismissed in the rain. Meeting her eyes, I smiled and began my speech. 5 years ago, I wrote a proposal about the power of community support, about how everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, to grow, to shine. Today, we're not just opening another center, we're making that vision reality. I paused, my hand resting on my slightly rounded belly, our first child still our secret for a few more weeks. Sometimes, life's greatest betrayals lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Sometimes, losing everything means making room for everything you've ever dreamed of. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living your truth so boldly that those who tried to break you become nothing but a footnote in your success story. Alexander squeezed my hand as the room erupted in applause. And in that moment, I sent a silent thank you to David. His cruelty had freed me. His betrayal had led me here. I'd lost a husband who dimmed my light, but I found a partner who helped me shine. I'd lost a fake family who valued status, but I built a real one based on love and respect. Most importantly, I found myself, the woman who'd always been there, waiting to emerge. Strong, capable, unstoppable. That night, as Alexander and I drove home to our modest house, we could afford bigger. But I love this one's cozy garden, he asked. Any regrets? I touched my growing belly, thought of our expanding centers, our passionate team, our future together. Just one, I smiled. I should have checked the company submission portal years ago. He laughed, the sound warm in the quiet car. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. And you know what? He was right. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its cruelest moments. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you never knew you were looking for. And sometimes a rainy Tuesday morning when your world falls apart becomes the first chapter of your greatest adventure.
That's why I requested you to settle the debt. The burden my husband suddenly imposed on me, vanishing without a trace. No matter how persistently I tried to reach him, there was absolute silence. Now, I'm left wondering what to do, facing an insurmountable debt. Fortunately, in my moments of despair, there was someone by my side offering encouragement. My dear daughter. Mom, cheer up, echoed the soothing voice of my beloved daughter. My name is Kate, 35 years old, juggling part-time work and homemaking. My husband, Rogan, and I, along with our daughter, make up our family of 3. I met Rogan at a mixer, a casual event I attended just to fill the numbers. Despite my nervousness, Rogan took the initiative to strike up a conversation, effortlessly lightening the atmosphere. Before long, we connected and decided to exchange contact information. As our communication deepened, a special bond blossomed between us. Unexpectedly, we started dating, a twist I shared with my older sister Talia after our first date. To my surprise, Talia burst into laughter, commenting, "I never thought you'd choose a boyfriend from a mixer." She assumed I'd find someone through work. Talia, enjoying her single life, didn't seem eager for a relationship. Fast forward a few years and Rogan and I got married. Talia congratulated us on our new life together. Our early days of marriage were filled with joy. Rogan's proposal and our move to a new apartment marked the beginning of our life as a married couple. Although our different work hours meant we seldom returned home together, we cherished the time spent dining, sleeping, and enjoying our days off together. This routine brought a new joy to our lives, and a few months later, we were blessed with the birth of our adorable daughter, Rhea. The emotional impact of Rhea's birth was profound, and I felt like I had found true happiness. Our families showered us with congratulatory gifts, celebrating this new addition. I resigned from my job to dedicate myself fully to my family and Rogan, always considerate, helped with housework and childcare. However, a few years later, regret began to seep into my heart. Rogan, after resigning from his job due to issues with a new superior, failed to communicate this significant decision to me beforehand. While I empathized with the challenges he faced at work, the abruptness of his resignation left me concerned, especially since our family relied on his income. The absence of any discussion or consultation added to my distress. That was so sudden. Have you already thought about your next job? I questioned him, grappling with the unforeseen turn of events. Yeah, don't worry. I'll figure something out. Rogan's vague response failed to ease my concerns. However, it seemed the only option now was to trust him. Fortunately, Rogan quickly secured a new job, a relief for both of us. I also considered working, but since Rhea is still young, I want to be there for her at home. Is everything okay at the new workplace? Have you settled in? I inquired, attempting to gauge his well-being. Yeah, somehow. Did something happen? Are you not getting along with your boss or colleagues? I persisted. I told you I'm fine. Don't worry too much. Look, I'll take care of Rhea, so you go and take a bath. Really, thank you, he responded. Though he seemed different than usual, I refrained from prying further and handed Rhea to him before heading to the bath. A few days later, Rogan returned home looking dejected. As I tried to inquire about what had happened, memories of his abrupt resignation flashed through my mind. Did he quit his job again within such a short period? I quit my job. I just couldn't get along with the people there. I couldn't stand being constantly directed by someone much younger than me. I just couldn't bear it anymore, he explained. I see, but we'll get through this. We'll find another job. I'll help in any way I can. Suddenly, Rogan's expression changed, and he raised his voice at me. Hey, what's with that look? You don't like that I quit? You're able to eat because I work. You just stay at home and you're acting all high and mighty. After throwing his bag onto the living room table, he continued, Shut up. Just be quiet. Unable to contain his anger, Rogan grabbed a whiskey from the fridge and downed it in one gulp. I had never seen him this angry before. I felt terrified at that moment. Despite my gratitude towards him and efforts to be supportive, an extremely angry Rogan shouted at me for a while, then slumped down on the sofa looking grumpy. I was so shocked that all I could do was accept his words, and this incident created a rift in our relationship. Since then, Rogan has been caught in a cycle of finding and quitting jobs, leaving us in uncertainty with many anxious days. I couldn't keep silent any longer. Rogan, can't you be a bit more serious about your job? If you have complaints, then you work and earn money. You rely too much on me, but there's Rhea to consider. So what's your point? Lately, Rogan has been gradually losing interest in Rhea and seems to be avoiding her. When Rhea was born, he took great care of her and was genuinely happy. Observing Rogan now, he felt like a completely different person. No matter how much I pleaded, Rogan showed no interest in continuing his work. Eventually, I decided to entrust Rhea to Talia and started working on my own. I'm really sorry for having to leave her with you. I apologized to Talia. It's okay. Rhea and I will wait together, she reassured me. Rhea, who had just started attending kindergarten, wasn't a major concern. Part of it was because I trusted Talia to take care of her. But Rhea was also remarkably mature and calm for her age. She showed interest in newspapers, read them on her own, and could even write long and somewhat complex sentences. Rhea had a quiet disposition and was exceptionally composed for her age. When she started attending kindergarten, I was concerned about whether she'd be able to make friends and effectively communicate with others besides me. However, it turned out I didn't need to worry. Rhea made many friends in kindergarten and enjoyed her time there. As a parent, that was the most heartwarming thing to witness, given the situation. I felt it would be no problem for me to work outside the home. When I started looking for a job, I found one quicker than expected, and I began working full-time. The pay was better than I had anticipated, and even if Rogan quit his job, our finances would probably stabilize. Thankfully, the work environment was also pleasant, and despite the busy days, I enjoyed working. A few years after I began working, Rogan finally found a stable job. It seemed like he had finally found a workplace that satisfied him. Learning this brought a profound sense of relief. Over time, Rogan's demeanor brightened, and he seemed to return to the man I knew in the early days of our marriage. He became considerate of the challenges I faced juggling work and family, often asking, "Has it been tough? Aren't you tired?" I was a bit taken aback by this transformation. Perhaps job stability had given Rogan peace of mind. Rhea was growing up healthily, and Rogan started acting like a caring father to her once again. Seeing Rhea play joyfully with Rogan always warmed my heart. Still, the thought of returning to the way things were before made me anxious about leaving my job. Therefore, I continued to rely on Talia for childcare. "How's Rhea? Is she looking well?" I would ask Talia. "Don't worry, she's playing happily," she reassured me. If Rhea was doing well, I could be at ease. I probably would continue to depend on Talia. I had been considering treating Talia to something she liked as a token of my appreciation. Several years went by, and Rhea was now in the 3rd grade of elementary school. She attended school every day with great enthusiasm. The family's bond was just like before, harmonious and loving. I wondered what had caused the previous rift between Rogan and me. Our home life felt so stable, almost as if the past problems had been forgotten. Then, one day, Rogan made a suggestion. "Ever think about getting a new car?" I was taken aback. "A new car?" "Yeah, our current car is good, but I think it's reaching the end of its life. If it's becoming a hassle to maintain, indeed the car we were using had been purchased quite a while ago. Over the years, issues increased, and the repair costs started to pile up. You might be right. Maybe we should consider a new car." "Yes, I knew you'd agree. By the way, I've already got some catalogs pulled ready." "Thanks." I didn't expect him to be this eager about replacing the car. I was a bit surprised, but we started looking through the catalogs together. "Rhea, come here. Which car do you want to ride in? Let's decide together." He called Rhea over, and the 3 of us enjoyed flipping through the car catalogs together. However, I couldn't have imagined that this day would mark the beginning of an unexpected turn of events. A few months later, the new car that the 3 of us chose was delivered. The car we bought was a brand new model costing over $155,000. The loan was under my name. Generally, people would expect Rogan's name on the loan, but considering his unstable work history, we were concerned about being rejected. I was determined to work even harder from now on and pay off the loan. I was sure Rogan felt the same way, that's what I believed. But my hopes were shattered in an instant. Rogan stopped coming home. He disappeared along with the newly purchased car. Could it be that Rogan got involved in some kind of trouble? What should I do? At that moment, my cell phone rang. The call was from Rogan. "Hello, Rogan. Where are you? What are you doing?" Out of concern, my voice raised unintentionally. "Hey, calm down. But you disappeared all of a sudden, and the new car is gone. What happened? Did you get caught up in some trouble?" I tried to convey how I had worried every day until then, but Rogan laughed at my concerns and said something unbelievable. "Actually, I found a new lover. She's more important to me than you." "What? What do you mean? Let me be clear. I've fallen in love with someone else. I've already taken care of the divorce notice. I'd appreciate it if you stopped getting involved." "Wait, divorce? I can't believe this." I was shocked by the mention of a divorce notice. However, I remembered a discussion we had during a big fight a while ago. Submitting the application to the court means that both parties agree to the divorce. I deeply regretted letting my emotions take control at that time. "Oh, by the way, I have a debt. I'm counting on you to repay it." "What? How much debt are we talking about?" "I think $200,000, give or take. I'm leaving all the repayments to you." With those words, Rogan abruptly hung up the phone. I never thought something like this would happen to me. Were all of his kind smiles in the past just lies? As these thoughts crossed my mind, I could feel the strength drain from my body. "Mom, what happened?" As I slumped to the floor, Rhea rushed over, looking concerned. "It's okay, honey. Thank you." I tried to put on a brave face, but inside, I was filled with anxiety. How will I manage our life now with such a massive debt looming over us? The thought of the $200,000 made me feel suffocated. On top of that, there was still the car loan to think about. In a state of panic, I decided to check my bank balance, searching everywhere. Closet, drawers, kitchen, bedroom. But my ATM card was nowhere to be found. Frantically, I launched my bank app on my smartphone. And to my horror, the account balance had significantly decreased. I had no memory of withdrawing such an amount, and the only suspect was Rogan. Trying to contact him proved futile, and with my mind going blank, I thought I should focus on earning money. I chose to keep this a secret from Talia and young Rhea to avoid unnecessary worry. A few weeks after Rogan disappeared, I lost consciousness at work. Upon waking up, I found myself in a hospital bed, where Talia and Rhea revealed they knew about Rogan and my deteriorating health. Rhea had overheard Rogan's phone call, and Talia, surprisingly furious, wanted to locate Rogan to make him repay the debt and medical bills. However, Rogan's whereabouts remained unknown. When I was discharged, I fell down, fearing Talia's reprimand for letting her know. Various tests revealed my poor health was due to cancer, still in the early stages with hope for recovery through surgery. Though the surgery went well, returning to work immediately seemed impossible due to mounting medical bills and no savings. During these challenging times, Talia and Rhea became my pillars of support. Talia tried to locate Rogan, and when she discovered he was working in the same building, they hatched a plan to get back the car that was under my name. As we prepared to confront Rogan, Talia stopped me, emphasizing the need for a solid plan. Rhea reassured me that everything was set up, and a month later, while at Talia's house, a sudden call from Rogan came in. After ignoring it initially, I gathered my courage and answered. In a frantic voice, Rogan pleaded for help, claiming he was about to be arrested. He shared his location and quickly ended the call. Talia and Rhea then revealed the turn of events. They had reported the car as stolen, a move aimed at compelling Rogan to confront the consequences. Filled with gratitude, Rhea blushed, and the mystery of their plan became clear. I expressed my gratitude to Talia and Rhea and hurried to the park where Rogan was waiting. The specified park was surprisingly close to my home, and when we arrived, we found police officers interrogating Rogan about something. After explaining the situation to the officers and having them leave, Rogan ushered us into his car and began narrating the events that led to this. Inside the car, a confident-looking woman named Lily sat boldly in the passenger seat, staring at us with a cold gaze. Rogan questioned why the police came to him, seemingly unaware of the gravity of the situation. Rhea confronted Rogan, asking why he left them behind and why he wouldn't pay back the money himself. Rogan, visibly shaken, remained silent. Rhea and Talia continued questioning Rogan about his actions and his relationship with Lily. Talia criticized Rogan's irresponsible behavior, constantly changing jobs, and quick temper. Rogan bowed his head in silence, and Lily, visibly irritated, revealed shocking details. Rogan had borrowed $200,000 in his wife's name for expensive luxury gifts for Lily. Rhea questioned Lily about her pregnancy, and Talia noticed an inconsistency in the timeline. Lily revealed that the child wasn't Rogan's and admitted to keeping it a secret to avoid further involvement with him. The tension increased, and Talia took charge, threatening to call the police for the criminal acts committed. Ignoring Rogan and Lily's pleas, Talia instructed me to contact the police. Legal actions were taken, and Rogan and Lily faced consequences, including compensation payments, repaying the debt, and child support. Despite attempts to reduce payments through lawyers, a secret recording made by Rhea served as evidence denying their requests. In the end, Rogan and Lily didn't go to prison, but had to shoulder responsibilities. Rhea and I now live with Talia, and the car was safely returned. Rogan is somehow managing the debt, and the presence of Talia and Rhea played a significant role in resolving the situation. Grateful for their support, I look forward to a peaceful life with the two of them, working hard for a better future.
Greetings, my name is Carolyn, and my life was forever changed the day my husband, Stephen, left me to care for his ailing parents while he embarked on a 3-year holiday. Little did I know, his return would be nothing more than an attempt to claim his inheritance. What he didn't anticipate, however, was that destiny had other plans, leading to a satisfying and sweet form of revenge. When Stephen and I first met, I believed we shared something profound. Our relationship began after I lost my first husband to cancer, spending 6 years in mourning. It was my friends who encouraged me to try dating again. After some time chatting online, Stephen and I decided to meet in person, and it wasn't long before our dates led to his proposal 3 years later. Stephen made a point of including my daughter, Teresa, in every aspect of our lives. Teresa, who was just 5 when her biological father died, quickly formed a close bond with Stephen. The two became inseparable, and for me, it felt like a dream come true. We envisioned a future filled with grand dreams, raising Teresa, buying our own home, and traveling the world. But 8 years into our marriage, Stephen's parents, Judy and Roy, fell seriously ill, requiring constant care and medical attention. It was then that Stephen approached me with a difficult request. "Carolyn, I need to talk to you about something important," Stephen said, his voice tinged with nervousness. "What is it, Stephen?" I asked, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "You know my parents aren't doing well," he began. "They need a lot of care, and neither one of them can take care of the other." "I understand," I said, my voice filled with empathy. "It's heartbreaking, and I wish there was something more we could do." "That's just it, Carolyn," he replied. "They're my parents, and I can't turn my back on them. I need your help." "I know, Stephen," I said. "That's why I thought we could put them in a nursing home. They'd get the care they need, and if cost is an issue, we'll manage somehow." "It's not about the cost," he said, hesitating. "I was thinking of something else." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, already bracing myself for something difficult. "Could we have them move in with us? I want to take care of them, but I need your help." I hesitated, feeling overwhelmed. Between work, taking care of Teresa, and everything else, it already felt like a lot. But Stephen reassured me. "Don't worry, Carolyn," he said. "You won't have to handle everything alone. I'll be here, putting in as much work as you are. I promise." Convinced by his words, I agreed. "Okay, let's do it. I care about Judy and Roy, and Teresa would love to have her grandparents close by." "Thank you, Carolyn. I won't let you down," Stephen promised. Having cared for my late husband, I wasn't unfamiliar with the demands of caregiving. Judy, suffering from a severe autoimmune disease, was bedridden and needed specialized care. Roy, with a chronic heart condition, required constant monitoring. Their health quickly became our top priority, and at first, Stephen seemed committed to sharing the burden with me. But over time, things began to change. The sleepless nights, hospital visits, and constant demands of caregiving took their toll on both of us. Yet, we pushed forward. But as weeks turned into months, Stephen's dedication waned. His missed medical appointments and growing disinterest became hard to ignore. It felt like I was the only one carrying the weight. 3 years into this caregiving journey, Stephen announced yet another business trip, this one lasting 3 weeks. That was the final straw. "How can you just leave us now, Stephen? Your parents need us, and you're walking away like it doesn't matter," I exclaimed, frustration bubbling over. "Oh, here we go again," Stephen shot back. "Why am I always painted as the villain? I have important work to do. It's not like I'm abandoning them forever." Teresa, upset, chimed in. "Dad, you can't keep doing this. Grandma and Grandpa need us, and you're always gone. It's not fair. Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I don't understand the situation?" Stephen retorted, his voice defensive. "I have responsibilities too." "Responsibilities?" I questioned. "What responsibilities?" You've been absent for so long. Meanwhile, your parents are getting worse, and you seem to not care. How dare you say that? I'm trying to balance everything, my career, our family. It's not easy managing it all, Stephen argued. It's not about balancing, Dad. It's about prioritizing. You should be here when your family needs you the most, but instead, you're always putting yourself first, Teresa said, her voice filled with emotion. I'm doing this for us. For a better future. Stephen claimed, but his words seemed hollow. A better future by abandoning your parents in their time of need? I countered. You're tearing this family apart. Teresa stood by my side, defending me. Mom has been here the whole time, taking care of Grandma and Grandpa. You're the one who's been absent. Teresa's right, Stephen. I've done everything I could to care for your parents, I said, my heart heavy. I thought you'd be here with me, but I was wrong. It was then I realized I had been carrying the weight alone for too long. The scales were tipping, and I was no longer going to let him walk away from his responsibilities. I said, my voice thick with sorrow, perhaps I'm tired of always putting others first. Maybe it's time I start prioritizing my own needs for once. It looks like you'll have to manage without me. Stephen's tone grew sharp, and his resolve was clear. Is this it then? You're just walking away from your parents? I asked, disbelief clouding my words. It's time I take a step back and reassess everything, Stephen said firmly. This isn't the life I envisioned for myself. I need space to think. Without another word, Stephen retreated to our bedroom, hastily packing his things. His departure left a deep void, a stark reminder of the growing fractures in our family. Teresa and I sat in silence, watching him go. After Stephen left, guilt washed over me in waves. I wondered if I was the cause of his decision, if somehow my actions had pushed him to this point. Night after night, Teresa and I cried, reaching out to him in hopes of reconciliation, but our efforts were in vain. What was supposed to be a short 3-week trip turned into months, further deepening our sorrow.
Judy and Roy, devastated by their son's absence, saw their health decline even more, and my role as their sole caregiver became even more taxing. Hospital visits, managing medications, and keeping up with the household became my new normal. As months turned into a year, I resolved to move past my grief over Stephen's absence. My focus shifted entirely to caring for Judy and Roy, supporting Teresa, and navigating the overwhelming responsibilities that came with it. Though the weight was heavy, I found a surprising strength in the process. In Stephen's absence, I became the pillar of resilience for Judy, Roy, and Teresa. Over time, I grew in my caregiving role, becoming not only their family by marriage, but their primary caregiver and unwavering supporter. Our bond deepened, rooted in my dedication to their well-being. Teresa, despite her youth, proved to be an incredible source of support, offering empathy and comfort that transcended her years. Together, we formed a sanctuary of love amidst the chaos. 3 years after Stephen walked away, driven by his greed, he returned, seeking the inheritance left by his parents. However, he was unaware that things had changed during his absence. Judy and Roy, recognizing my commitment and love, had entrusted me with managing their finances and legal matters. They decided that the estate, originally intended for Stephen, would now go to Teresa and me. It was a profound gesture of trust and gratitude for all I had done, a decision that solidified our family bond and prepared us to face Stephen's return head-on. The journey had transformed us, drawing us closer and solidifying our commitment to one another above all else. I went above and beyond, not just fulfilling their requests but adding my own touch of care and attention, making me feel truly valued in the process. During the countless hours I spent reorganizing their documents and ensuring their comfort, I knew I was doing the right thing. Despite the circumstances, I wasn't inclined to leave Stephen with nothing. I understood the pressure caregiving could place on someone, and I thought it fair to offer him a modest portion of the inheritance as a gesture of goodwill. However, that decision was quickly overturned when the private investigator I had hired uncovered Stephen's actions during his absence. My choice to hire a detective wasn't made lightly. I had grown increasingly suspicious of Stephen's motives long before he left, especially as his disinterest in his parents grew and his excuses mounted. Trusting my instincts, I sought the truth, and what I discovered confirmed my worst fears. I decided to dig deeper. My investigation into our financial dealings uncovered several unexplained transactions made to an unidentified account. When I confronted Stephen about these findings, it sparked one of our most heated arguments. "Stephen, we need to talk," I began, my voice steady but firm. "I've noticed some unusual financial transactions. Can you explain them to me?" His response came quickly, defensive and sharp. "Why are you prying into matters that don't concern you? It's none of your business." His tone raised immediate red flags. "These transactions could affect your parents' welfare." "It is my business too." "Are you hiding something?" I pressed, desperate for some transparency. Stephen's frustration boiled over. "Stop interrogating me. Can't you just trust me for once?" "Trust you?" I shot back. "Your parents are dependent on us. If you're involved in something risky, it's my right to know. It affects all of us." Stephen waved me off. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Carolyn. You always assume the worst." The tension in the room thickened. "Don't you see? Your lack of interest in your parents, these mysterious transactions, they point to something amiss. We should be working together on this, Stephen." I tried to remind him of our shared responsibilities. He didn't budge. "There's nothing to discuss, Carolyn. I'm sick of your accusations and meddling." "Maybe it's best if I leave," he said, his words hinting at a drastic solution. "Leave?" I asked, stunned. "You'd abandon your family just because you won't clarify something so simple? Is this who you are now?" Stephen's patience had clearly run out. "I can't stand your constant doubts and suspicion. If you can't trust me, maybe it's better if we part ways," he concluded, his words cutting deeper than any argument before. This confrontation laid bare the extent of Stephen's deceit and his diminishing involvement in his parental duties. His lack of transparency and growing detachment from his family only deepened the divide between us, making it clear that my vigilance was not misplaced. My decision to hire a private investigator had been driven by my growing suspicion of Stephen's actions, yet initially, the reports returned with mundane, everyday details, which left me feeling guilty. I wondered if I had made a rash decision based on unwarranted suspicion. Juggling my caregiving duties, raising my daughter, and dealing with this guilt, I eventually dismissed the investigator. But Stephen's sudden departure, without any explanation or communication, prompted me to rehire him. This time, I instructed the investigator to gather information quietly, keeping it on standby until I felt it was necessary. The decision almost slipped my mind, swallowed by the daily routine of caregiving, until Judy and Roy brought up their legal affairs, offering new insights. That's when I promised myself that if Stephen dared to return, he would face the consequences of his actions. True to my word, when Stephen returned, I was ready. He waltzed into our home as if his absence had left no lasting scars, ignoring his parents and barely acknowledging Teresa. His first words to me were demands for his share of the inheritance, as though nothing else mattered. "Are you serious, Stephen?" I asked, incredulous. "Your first concern is the inheritance? No word for your parents, no acknowledgement of the pain your absence caused, just your claim to what you believe is yours?" Stephen brushed it off, his tone dismissive. "I left to pursue my interests. I'm back now to claim my inheritance." "You should be grateful." "Grateful for what?" I retorted, my anger rising. "Grateful for abandoning your parents when they needed you most? For leaving me to handle everything alone? You have some nerve." Stephen's cold response hit like a slap. "You enjoy playing the martyr, Carolyn. I worked hard for that inheritance, and I have every right to it." "Worked hard?" I shot back. "You call abandoning your suffering parents working hard? They needed their son, and you chose to turn away." He tried to justify himself, claiming they were well cared for with me around. "It wasn't just my responsibility to look after them," he argued, "I had my own life to live." "What about our life, Stephen?" I demanded. "What about the commitments we made to each other, to our family? You've neglected us, betrayed the very essence of those vows." I argued, emphasizing the depth of Stephen's betrayal, but he remained unfazed, accusing me of overreacting and dismissing my feelings as mere theatrics. His complete lack of remorse for his actions only strengthened my resolve to stand up for what was right, for Judy, Roy, Teresa, and myself, no matter the challenges ahead. Stephen, full of entitlement, made it clear he would pursue his share of the inheritance, regardless of my objections. His blatant arrogance and disregard for the family's well-being were evident, but I stood firm. Stephen, your true nature is now undeniable. Your indifference has hurt us deeply, but I will not allow you to exploit your parents. They deserve more respect and care than you've ever shown, I declared, determined to protect their legacy. Good luck trying to stop me, Carolyn. You'll realize it's not that simple. I always secure what's mine, Stephen retorted smugly, confident he could bulldoze through any opposition. His smugness was something I was ready to challenge, knowing his arrogance would soon meet a decisive blow. When the moment came to reveal the contents of his parents' wills, I watched as Stephen's smirk dissolved into disbelief and anger. His name was nowhere to be found, a testament to his neglect and the choices his parents had made in response. Enraged and blindsided, Stephen accused me of manipulating his parents, unaware of the full extent of his failings that had led to this moment. I kept my ace, the detailed account of his abandonment and negligence, close to my chest, simply requesting him to leave our home. As predicted, Stephen's frustration and wounded pride drove him to file a lawsuit against me, a desperate attempt to regain control and salvage his bruised ego. Throughout the trial, he spewed venomous lies, twisting the narrative to paint himself as a wronged victim. It was a calculated act to garner sympathy and manipulate the outcome of the trial. However, the strength of truth and evidence in a court of law is undeniable. The proof I provided painted a clear picture of my dedication to Judy and Roy through witness statements, medical records, and financial documents. The sacrifices I had made for their well-being were laid bare for all to see. As the trial progressed, the sincerity of my actions and the depth of Stephen's deceit became apparent. His fabrications unraveled, exposing the baselessness of his claims. One by one, his allegations fell apart, leaving him floundering in the face of overwhelming evidence against him. This battle wasn't just for the inheritance, but for dignity and respect, underscoring the value of truth and integrity against deceit and selfishness. But my pursuit of justice didn't end with a courtroom victory. The win alone wasn't enough for me. I wanted Stephen to fully understand the depth of his actions. When it was my turn to testify, I chose to lay bare the truth I had uncovered, thanks to my diligent private investigator. With a steady and strong voice, I detailed the years of neglect his parents endured, the countless nights I stayed awake ensuring their comfort, and the sacrifices I made for their sake. I painted a clear picture of Stephen's abandonment, emphasizing how he pursued his selfish desires over the welfare of his own family. Then came the revelation that shocked everyone in the courtroom: Stephen's so-called business trips and vacations were a facade for his affair with another woman. He had left his family in ruins for his own gratification. Stephen's defense scrambled, attempting to dismiss my claims as fabrications, but the evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, emails, photographs, and financial records all pointed to the undeniable truth. Stephen was left speechless, his secrets exposed for all to see. But I didn't stop there. My lawyer introduced a surprise witness, Stephen's secret partner. The moment she took the stand, the color drained from Stephen's face, a clear sign of his guilt. It became evident that Stephen had not been fully honest with his legal team, as his lawyer's expressions fluctuated between disbelief and disapproval. I had learned that Stephen's partner was none other than an ex-girlfriend from before our time together. Upon discovering her identity and her role in Stephen's double life, I reached out to her, and we conspired to keep her involvement a secret until the trial to avoid arousing Stephen's suspicion. She agreed to testify against him, revealing their rekindled romance that had begun 4 years prior, their living arrangement under the pretense of a job transfer, and Stephen's false narrative of an impending inheritance. In a dramatic turn, she confronted Stephen in the courtroom, discarding the ring he had given her and severing ties with him publicly. The entire courtroom was shaken by the revelations, especially Judy and Roy, who were already weakened by their health conditions. They were visibly distraught by the betrayal, engulfed in a mix of disappointment and grief. This unveiling not only condemned Stephen's actions, but also highlighted the consequences of his choices, leaving a lasting impact on all who witnessed it. The truth, stark and unforgiving, had finally come to light, offering a semblance of justice to those wronged by his deceit. Winning the case wasn't enough for me. I felt Stephen needed to truly understand the impact of his actions. So, I stood up in court and shared everything I had learned from my investigator. I talked about the sleepless nights, the sacrifices I made to care for his sick parents. Then I revealed that Stephen had left us for another woman, shattering our family for selfish reasons. Stephen's lawyer tried to deny my claims, but we had solid proof, texts, emails, photos, and more, showing Stephen's true actions. When his affair partner was called as a surprise witness, Stephen was shocked. It seemed he hadn't been completely honest with his lawyer. I discovered the woman was Stephen's ex, and I reached out to her. We agreed she'd stay under the radar until the trial, to avoid suspicion. On the stand, she shared how Stephen had contacted her years ago, saying he missed her. They got back together, and he moved in with her, hiding the fact that he was married and had abandoned his parents. He even lied about expecting a big inheritance from his parents. In court, she confronted Stephen, threw her engagement ring at him, and told him to never contact her again. This revelation deeply affected everyone, especially Judy and Roy, who were already weakened by their illnesses. They felt a mix of disappointment and sadness, seeing the extent of Stephen's betrayal.
I had envisioned a life in this house, just my mother and me, until my husband Todd unexpectedly announced otherwise. The surprise left me in disbelief as he declared, "I'll handle all the monthly expenses, so I need you to leave," firmly raising her voice. I was taken aback and bewildered by their sudden decision. The motives behind their actions only became clearer when my mother-in-law completed the condominium contractor's name change. My name is Summer, and at 34 years old, I lead a busy life. My father, who ran a small-town workshop, bestowed this name upon me due to my birth during the summer season. While it may seem basic, it carries my late father's deep love. His polishing skills were renowned in the industry, and despite tough times, I cherished the moments playing in the workshop as a child. However, the workshop faced financial difficulties, leading to my father's tragic end in the back of the shop during my elementary school years. To shield me, my mother and I left town to start a discreet life elsewhere. Unfortunately, the years of hardship took a toll on my mother's health, and she passed away during my high school years. Despite the despair, I channeled the courage to face life head-on, driven by an inner passion to showcase my father's skills to future generations. Working tirelessly, I managed to graduate high school with scholarship support, juggling numerous part-time jobs to afford daily expenses while studying engineering at the local public university. During my university days, I encountered Todd, a friendly young man who recognized and admired my skills. Unlike many others, he never looked down on me for being a woman, fueling my determination. After graduating, we began living together, sharing our lives. Todd efficiently managed household chores, providing immense support, especially on busy workdays. 6 years later, at 28, I contemplated reviving my father's small-town workshop, with Todd wholeheartedly supporting my dream. As we discussed the possibility of marriage frequently over these 6 years, my lifelong dream seemed poised to become a reality. However, my primary focus was on rebuilding my father's workshop before considering marriage. Todd respected this wish and patiently waited. To raise funds, I opted for crowdfunding, leveraging my position as a female engineer. I incorporated the uniqueness of my story into the advertising campaign, aligning with the societal shift towards increased support for women. Carefully planning and persistently securing funding and the right personnel, after 4 years of effort, I successfully revived the town workshop. Mindful of the financial struggles the old workshop faced, I introduced state-of-the-art equipment and gave the factory a modern and sophisticated design. By establishing facilities and systems conducive to women, I aimed to create a workplace that was both productive and female-friendly. These efforts quickly elevated the workshop's status to top tier within the industry. While some might perceive my success as luck, it was, in fact, the result of numerous challenges and tireless efforts. Todd, my university partner, knew this best. However, Todd's career faced challenges, and while his colleagues progressed, he remained a rank-and-file employee. Growing frustrated, he started expressing his dissatisfaction, saying coldly, "You're really lucky to have succeeded. There must be someone better for you than me, right?" I repeatedly reassured him that my success wouldn't have been possible without his unwavering support. I genuinely believed his involvement in my life and career was indispensable. To express my deep gratitude and love, I proposed marriage. I valued his special presence, pure and warm-hearted sensitivity, bringing happiness to my everyday life. Despite finding great comfort and solace in his presence, I began noticing changes in his heart over the 10 years since we became adults. My hope was to dispel his insecurities through marriage. Upon deciding to marry, we rushed to inform our families. Contrary to my expectations, Todd's family home was an old, decaying wooden house that raised concerns about its stability. When Todd's mother first saw me, she remarked, "You're the daughter of the wealthy business owner they often talk about," reflecting my past fundraising and media exposure. In the pursuit of success, I had emphasized the importance of first impressions, but the reality of Todd's family background differed from my expectations. I dedicated considerable time and effort to my attire and appearance, aiming for a suitable impression. However, from my mother-in-law's perspective, my outfit might have appeared flashy and excessive. She started speaking in a sarcastic tone, implying that I owed my appearance to Todd's assistance. Despite feeling grateful, I sensed tension as I entered their quite old house. Todd seemed to have something on his mind, but remained silent. His father, in tattered clothes and with a restless demeanor, reflected the atmosphere of the home. Apologizing for the state of their house, he acknowledged its issues and conveyed that it might differ from the appearance of a wealthy household. Trying to calm myself, I internally took several deep breaths. Each time I made a casual remark, Todd's parents responded with comments about how rich people have different ways of thinking and values than common people like us, making genuine conversation difficult. Back at home, I asked Todd about his parents' views on wealth, and he shared surprising facts. Since childhood, he was taught that fancy apartment buildings were probably built on wrongdoing, and wealthy people engaged in shady dealings. They were believed to lack understanding of others' feelings or hardships, and Todd was advised to avoid befriending children from wealthy families. Although I hadn't grown up in a wealthy family myself, I found it intriguing to understand the roots of his parents' strong feelings. Even afterward, Todd's parents disapproved of our relationship. His mother often expressed concern about me making him do too much, while his father advised him not to let married life be completely dominated by his wife. These sentiments seemed to contribute to Todd's declining self-esteem. Behind my successful career was a desire to fulfill my late father's dream, not a wish to look down on others or use them. Despite Todd previously discussing this with his parents, my social success left a lasting impression on them. Attempting to improve our relationship, I communicated and tried to understand them multiple times. However, no matter how much goodwill I showed, Todd's father approached me with bias, saying, "This is how rich people think." Their reactions gradually closed off my heart. Meanwhile, as Todd visited his family more frequently due to his father's deteriorating health, we started distancing ourselves, even though we were married and living together. About 2 years later, he suddenly announced that he had decided to quit his job because he was too busy with things at home. I was infuriated that Todd made such a significant decision without discussing it with me first. At that point, our relationship had deteriorated into a mere formality, lacking meaningful and sincere communication. He claimed to be busy with housework, but in reality, he frequently visited casinos and racetracks. When I confronted him about his actions, Todd dismissively suggested hiring a professional housekeeper, stating that he wasn't my servant and we had enough money to cover the expense. His words left me deeply shocked and at a loss for a response. Around that time, Todd's father's health worsened, and he passed away. 2 months after receiving this news, my mother-in-law and Todd visited my house, and he unexpectedly declared, "I plan to live in this house with my mother, just the two of us." Taken aback by this sudden statement, I stood there speechless. Todd went on to say, "I will pay the monthly rent, so I want you to leave." Shocked by this demand, I could only ask, "Wait a minute, are you really able to pay the rent, Todd?" Instead of a reasonable response, my mother-in-law yelled at me, expressing her anger and stating that she couldn't forgive me for belittling them. Todd, dissatisfied, sighed deeply, proclaiming that he wouldn't tolerate being bossed around anymore and intended to live life on his terms. Surprised by their intense attitude, I momentarily lost my words. Reflecting on their past actions and words, I realized that dealing with them would be extremely challenging. I responded firmly, "I understand. I will leave this house next month." Unsatisfied, my mother-in-law pushed for an even quicker departure, demanding, "Can't you just get the hell out of here and leave next week?" I'm being ready for my new life, and I've already arranged for my stuff to be delivered to my new house. Her abrupt demands puzzled me, considering I had just decided to leave. Unable to comprehend her reasoning or course of action, I hesitated. In response, my mother-in-law raised her voice even more, asserting, "Someone as wealthy as you should leave them moving to professionals, right?" She repeated a sarcastic phrase, implying that she viewed the wealthy as something special or different. Initially, I considered it proper for them to move to a new place since I was the one who contracted for the house. However, my mother-in-law continued to assert strongly, "This house belongs to Todd. No matter how much you earn, I won't allow you to hide that fact." Behind her words, I sensed a message that my higher income shouldn't make me feel superior to Todd. Looking at Todd's changed and gloomy expression, I questioned why I had invested so much time in such a person. In this unbearable situation, where living with them seemed insufferable, and I wanted to avoid sharing the same space, breathing the same air, I concluded that it was time to seriously consider divorce. Understood. This weekend, I'll proceed with the moving arrangements, handling all necessary document changes and procedures. When I responded in a soft tone, Todd and his mother exchanged glances, smirking triumphantly, as if a long battle had ended, and they had finally won. Immediately, I began searching for vacancies in apartments and condos, also looking for a reliable moving company amidst my busy days, including work-related business trips. Returning home, I found Todd deep in sleep, seemingly ignoring my existence. On the weekend, he calmly signed the divorce papers without displaying any emotion. Meanwhile, his mother was receiving explanations from the real estate agent about the rental agreement and signing the contract. I was particularly concerned about whether she truly understood the high rent of $66,000. After completing all the procedures, I found myself walking alone toward a new place with a high-rise condo behind me. The new apartment, a one-bedroom with secure surroundings, was perfect for me living alone. During the move, I decided to discard many unnecessary things, clearing both my room and my mind for a fresh start. Decorating the space to my liking was an enjoyable time for me, gradually immersing myself in the new lifestyle. Thoughts of Todd and his family started to fade, although I couldn't completely erase them from my mind. Reflecting on the memories with Todd and the challenging times we had overcome together, I never imagined our relationship would end this way. Especially during our university days when we struggled financially, we supported each other's livelihood. The strain that developed over time was deep and immeasurable. However, I later came across shocking information when I coincidentally reunited with a university friend. She told me rumors of Todd flaunting around in city clubs. Also, A former neighbor from where I used to live mentioned seeing my ex-mother-in-law frequently entering and exiting a luxury foreign car. They described them wearing unfamiliar luxurious fur clothes and speaking completely differently than before. Hearing about their lavish lifestyle, I couldn't believe they'd once looked down on the wealthy. Particularly after I had distanced myself from that life, I saw how much they had transformed. Then, unexpectedly, 2 months later, I received a call from Todd. "I really need your help." His voice conveyed a level of desperation I had never heard before. I had not expected to hear from him in such a manner after our one-sided relationship ended. Actually, we've gotten ourselves into some unexpected trouble. What exactly happened? Todd's response indicated that the events had begun 3 months prior. He was shocked to learn the astonishing truth through a call from his mother. "I hit the jackpot in the lottery. Can you believe $30 million? She had apparently been buying lottery tickets in the past, and this time she had won an amount beyond her wildest dreams. Is that really true, or is it a joke?" Todd asked her to confirm. After checking the lottery numbers multiple times herself, the ex-mother-in-law assured, "There's no mistake. I've checked it over and over. We are so unbelievably rich now. Now we can face those upper-class people with no problem. Truly, God has blessed us." She spoke with elation, lifting her spirits. Moved by these words, Todd was in tears, and his mother added, "With this amazing stroke of luck, you can escape from that woman's clutches. Have you heard? She seems to be frolicking around with some young guy now. Such a woman should be kept at a distance." These words pushed Todd further, and his pent-up anger and frustration boiled over. "Now that we've acquired wealth, I won't be controlled by her. We won't have anything to do with her anymore," he declared with a trembling voice, informing me of our disconnection. It became evident that during these events, a common goal had emerged between them to completely exclude me. Subsequently, they began a lavish lifestyle in a downtown luxury condo, seemingly spending extravagantly every day. Todd used his savings liberally, and the ex-mother-in-law spent her late husband's inheritance without any reservations. Excited, they decided to go to the nearest bank to cash in the lottery ticket. However, at the bank, they faced a shocking truth. The lottery ticket they brought was from the previous year. Disbelief and dismay spread across their faces. It turned out the ex-mother-in-law had been comparing last year's lottery ticket with this year's winning numbers. Amidst this commotion, there was a deep-seated fear that somehow I would take their wealth from them. Surprised upon hearing their story, I was at a loss for words. "That's truly unfortunate and sad." I conveyed my sympathy. Just as I was about to end the call, Todd spoke up again, asking, "But we should have a right to alimony, right?" Continuing to claim without any basis, he added, "You were cheating, right? On that fact alone, we should be able to claim alimony." Explaining his situation, Todd felt stressed about the house and believed he had the right to demand alimony. However, it was clear in my memory that Todd had quit his job on his own accord. My emotions surged, and I couldn't tolerate such baseless claims. "I can't believe you would say such a thing, you sleazy man. Are you for real?" I raised my voice involuntarily. In this moment, my usual calm judgment and strong resilience frayed. Perhaps sensing my anger, I could feel Todd's surprise and confusion over the phone. "Truly, it's me who should be seeking alimony. You only think about yourself, heartlessly kicking me out always. That want-to-be-rich spiel, I heard it so many times. Why do you and your mother complain so much? I can't tolerate this attitude of just being jealous without making any effort." I continued with an emotional outburst. After my emotional outburst, there was a moment of silence. Then, I felt a sense of clarity and hung up the phone. Their mistake with the lottery ticket astounded me, but now it was none of my business. Whatever fate they met was irrelevant to me. Days later, as I walked in front of my factory, I saw my ex-mother-in-law in a visibly deplorable state. She appeared before me and began to prostrate. "Please help me. We can't afford to return the $66,000. Please come back and be a part of our family again." That should have been clearly written in the documents. Why didn't you check them thoroughly? Didn't you understand how serious it all was? And about that lottery ticket, I murmured slowly, choosing my words carefully. Will you truly abandon a mother and child struck by such misfortune? After a pause, I shook my head calmly and said, I believe that luck, in many cases, is something you forge for yourself despite hardships. I have strived to carve out my own destiny. How much of that mindset did you have? My words left her with a surprised and somewhat regretful expression. Struggling to find a response, I walked past her and started walking in the direction of the building. After a short walk, I turned around to find my former mother-in-law still standing there. But I never looked back again and kept walking, focused on the path ahead. As expected, Todd and his mother were eventually evicted from the luxury condo. They chose an old wooden shack as their new dwelling, having spent all their savings. Now, they spend their days working various part-time jobs to support themselves and save for the future. Over the following years, I dedicated myself to my work, and my factory grew far beyond its original small-town scale. I secured funds to purchase a larger plot of land nearby and established a new state-of-the-art factory there. This newly built facility was designed with the comfort of the entire family in mind, complete with maternity leave and childcare facilities for employees. Although my parents were not able to witness this success in person, every time I see a smiling couple with their children visiting the factory, I remember myself as a child and feel a deep sense of relief and happiness at the sight of them.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna, I'm 30 years old, living in San Antonio, Texas, though I'm planning to relocate soon. Life has been a whirlwind recently, as I've just emerged from a difficult marriage that lasted a year and a half. It was a harrowing experience, and I had to rely on my dad and the police to safely leave. I often wonder if I could have avoided that situation had I been more cautious or wise. I've always been quiet and reserved, more comfortable with my computer and the online world than face-to-face interactions. Socializing was never my strong suit, and the thought of strangers approaching me made me anxious. Losing my mom to a heart condition when I was 7 profoundly shaped my life. My dad, a Navy SEAL since he was 25, raised me on his own. His job often took him away for long stretches, but he stayed connected through letters and calls. After my mom passed, my dad came home to find me inconsolable. I remember how hard he worked to comfort me, promising that everything would be okay now that he was back. Still, I could sense his grief, and it was the first time I saw him overwhelmed. When I had a playground accident a few months later, he took a short break from work to stay with me. During that time, he left me in the care of my grandmother, asking her to teach me how to bake and cook my favorite treats. I promised to learn, clinging to the thought of showing my dad what I'd made when he returned. He reassured me before leaving again, saying, "I'll be back in about 7 months. Honey, take care of yourself." True to his word, he sent me gifts and souvenirs from his travels, each one a little story that kept him close despite the distance. Most of my childhood was spent indoors with my grandmother. I preferred the quiet over playing with other children and found solace in my own company. When my dad decided it was time for me to move back to our family home, I struggled with the change. College felt burdensome, and social interactions drained me, but online, I thrived. The digital world became my sanctuary, where I could explore endless stories and connect with people on my terms. In this vast virtual space, I met Brian, a streamer. Our friendship started with text chats and eventually moved to video calls. Though we both chose to stay anonymous, I wore a Batman mask while he opted for a scarf and beanie. "Hi, Anna, it's great to finally see you," he greeted, his tone warm and friendly. "Hello, Brian, nice to meet you, virtually, I replied, my nerves evident. "Likewise. So, how are you doing today? Talk to many people?" he asked with a light chuckle. "I'm okay, just a bit nervous, to be honest," I admitted. "That's completely normal, don't worry, I don't bite. Honestly, I'm probably just as awkward as you are," he reassured me with a grin, easing the tension. Our conversation flowed naturally after that. our shared awkwardness making it easier to open up. Tell me more about yourself, Brian. How did you find yourself in this online world? I asked, genuinely curious. And so began a connection built on shared stories and mutual understanding, one small step in navigating the complex journey of human connection. Eager to learn more about the person behind the screen, I leaned into our conversation, finding it marked by mutual understanding and a shared sense of belonging. It was a reminder of the unique connections the digital age makes possible, where even the most reserved individuals can find their place and voice. I've always been fascinated by meeting new people and understanding different viewpoints, I shared, but since I spend so much time at home, the online community has become the perfect avenue to explore those interests. What about you? Well, Brian began, I'm pretty introverted, so face-to-face interactions can be challenging. The online world feels safer, it's easier for me to express myself here. It was comforting to hear his perspective and to realize how meaningful virtual connections could be. The fact that our paths had crossed felt like a small stroke of fate. As we continued talking, exchanging life stories and finding shared interests, I felt myself relaxing. You make this so easy, I admitted, grateful for how naturally the conversation flowed. The feeling's mutual, you're easy to talk to, and I'm glad we met, Brian replied warmly. If you ever want to chat, I'm usually around, probably playing Mario. Oh, do you game? Not really, I said with a small laugh. I spend most of my time blogging and browsing Reddit. There's so much you can learn from the experiences people share there. True, he agreed. Sometimes, reading about others' lives makes me realize how ordinary my own feels. Honestly, I trust my online friends more than the ones I know offline. What I love about online interactions is the freedom. There's no obligation. You can engage or step back whenever you need to. His words struck a chord with me. The freedom of online connections was exactly what made them so special, allowing bonds to form without the pressures of traditional social norms. As our discussions continued, Brian and I built a genuine connection, one that felt as authentic as any friendship forged in person. I couldn't help but feel curious about where this online journey might lead me. One thing was clear, the experiences and lessons I'd gathered from my digital sanctuary had shaped me deeply and would remain a part of who I am as I ventured through life. However, my dad, ever cautious and traditional, would likely disapprove of me forming friendships with people I'd never met in person. The last time he visited, he couldn't resist delivering one of his lectures over dinner. So, how are your studies going, Dove? He asked, his tone as gentle as ever. Dad, I've graduated, I replied, a hint of sadness in my voice. But you wouldn't know that, you couldn't make it. His expression softened. Oh, Anna, he said, his voice heavy with regret. I know I missed it, and I'm truly sorry. I was caught up with work, but please know I regret not being there, Dad said, his voice heavy with genuine remorse. Despite our differences, the bond between us remained strong, a mix of love, concern, and a deep, sometimes challenging understanding. I even sent you an email about your birthday tomorrow, my pumpkin's big day, huh? Dad, stop with the old nicknames. I'm not 9 anymore, I protested, feeling a flicker of embarrassment. In my eyes, you'll always be my little dove, he replied with a soft smile. But let's talk about what's next for you. Have you thought about work? I'm not sure yet, I admitted, uncertainty creeping into my voice. What do you mean, not sure? What are your peers up to these days? He asked, sounding concerned. I don't have any friends, I confessed, the admission making me feel even more isolated. He looked surprised, then sighed. Listen, Anna, I didn't send you to live with your mom's family so you could avoid the world. There's so much out there, so many people to meet. You're missing out by staying in. That's just it, Dad. I don't know how to meet people. I mean, I have friends, but they're all online, I explained, hoping he'd understand. Online, Anna, that's not the best way to make friends, he replied, his concern clear in his voice. Okay, how about this? Let's go out shopping today, just the two of us. It's been ages since we've done that. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, I hesitated, the thought of stepping outside my comfort zone overwhelming. Come on, Anna, you need to try. Staying cooped up isn't good for you. Ever since your mom, Isabella, passed, you've changed, he said gently, trying to encourage me. Why bring mom into this? What are you trying to say? I snapped, a sudden wave of anger surging through me. I'm not trying to upset you, sweetheart, he said calmly. I'm just saying that we need to find ways to move forward despite our loss." But his words only fueled my frustration. I slammed my hand on the table, stood up, and left my meal unfinished. "Anna, don't treat your father like that. I'm just trying to help," he pleaded, but I was too upset to listen. "You don't understand me at all, so don't even try," I retorted, my emotions boiling over. Frustrated and needing solace, I turned to my online world, where I could chat with Brian. Brian had always been kind and understanding, offering a safe space to share my thoughts and feelings. His words felt like a balm for the storm of emotion swirling within me. In the quiet of my home, with the glow of the computer screen before me, I found a sense of peace. While the world outside continued to move forward, I sought refuge in my digital sanctuary, a place where I could truly be myself without the pressure of face-to-face interactions. But Dad's concerns lingered. Ever since I told him how much of my life revolved around the online world, he'd been encouraging me to take steps outside my virtual bubble. Despite my resistance, I could sense his hope that I'd find a way to reconnect with the world beyond the screen. I knew it would be hard for him to understand. Dad believed that by confining myself to my room, I was limiting my growth and experiences. He urged me to step outside my comfort zone, a thought that triggered my anxiety. I shared my frustrations with Brian, hoping he'd understand my situation. "Hey Anna, would you like to meet up sometime?" Brian asked. "We're both introverts, so we could find a quiet, peaceful place, somewhere not too crowded. I know just the spot." The idea caught me off guard. "I'm not sure. It feels a bit sudden. I need time to think about it," I replied, unsure of myself. "No pressure. Take your time. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. Here's my address. You're always welcome," Brian said, his words filled with patience and understanding. "Why are you so kind to me? I'm practically a stranger," I asked, puzzled by his warmth. "Because I genuinely like you," Brian said, his sincerity striking a chord within me. "I know it might sound odd, but I'd like to get to know you better. Whenever you're ready, you know where to find me." His kindness lingered in my thoughts, and after some time, I decided to take the leap and meet Brian in person. It was a monumental step for me. As I approached his home, my heart raced with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Surprisingly, he lived just a 35-minute drive away. I took a deep breath to muster my courage and knocked on his weathered wooden door. It creaked open to reveal Brian's warm, inviting smile. The instant I saw it, my anxiety melted away. Brian's charm was unexpectedly disarming. His home wasn't extravagant, but it had a cozy, lived-in charm that made me feel at ease. Inside, there were shelves lined with well-loved classic books, a collection of board games, and a well-organized computer space, each piece revealing something about him. "Welcome to my humble abode," he joked, using some gaming lingo I didn't entirely get. I might not catch all the gaming references, but thank you. Your place is cozy. Do you live here alone? I asked, stepping into his world. "No, I share it with my mom," he replied, his tone light as he invited me further into his life. His gesture bridged the gap between our online connection and this new, real-world friendship. Brian lived with his mom on the ground floor, while he had the top floor all to himself. He gave me a quick tour of the house, and we spent the whole day talking, getting to know each other better. Meeting in person made our bond feel even stronger, and I appreciated the person I'd come to know online even more. As the evening approached, Brian suggested we take a walk in the nearby park. The idea of being outside in the fresh air relaxed me, and my initial nerves began to fade. Walking with him felt like a natural continuation of our online conversations, but there was a new closeness that only in-person connection could bring. During our walk, I mentioned that I hadn't celebrated my birthday because of a fallout with my dad. Brian was sympathetic and hoped for reconciliation, believing that family ties would eventually heal. But as Brian and I grew closer, a possessive side of him began to show. He insisted on constant communication, getting upset if I spoke to others. Despite his claims of love and protection, his behavior began to feel more controlling than caring. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was caught in a game, and Brian was pulling the strings. The situation was complicated further by his mother's disapproval of our relationship. It hurt knowing she held negative feelings toward me, even though she'd never met me. Her close bond with Brian, though understandable, made me feel like an outsider. What was even more confusing was the contradiction in her behavior. While she disapproved of me, she also seemed to want him to get married, despite knowing I had no one else. It made navigating our relationship and his family dynamics all the more challenging. In a whirlwind of misplaced trust and vulnerability, I found myself swept into a secretive marriage with Brian. driven by his persistence and manipulation. He painted a picture where my father's disapproval and lack of love seemed to justify everything, convincing me that only he truly cared for me. I silently accepted the union, hoping it would become my refuge. Instead, it turned into anything but. As the months went by, a different side of Brian's mother emerged, one that sought to diminish me with her harsh words and actions. At first, I tried to brush off her cruel remarks, thinking they were misunderstandings, and that time would soften her view of me. Unfortunately, her disdain only grew, and she became an incessant source of emotional pain. Whether it was criticizing my cooking, questioning my cleanliness, or belittling my efforts, her goal seemed clear: to make me feel unwelcome and inadequate. Meanwhile, Brian remained detached, lost in his own world, leaving me to endure this torment alone. The isolation deepened my feelings of helplessness, and I started blaming myself. I regretted pushing away my father out of confusion and pride. One particularly difficult day, already weakened by illness, I sought comfort in sleep, only to be cruelly awakened by a splash of cold water. Brian's mother stood over me, her contempt palpable, scolding me for resting instead of doing chores. Then, she slapped me, shocking me into a breaking point. Something inside me snapped. "I'm not doing anything for you or your son anymore. I've had enough," I shouted, my voice trembling with the fury of my refusal to be demeaned any longer. In that moment, I realized I deserved better. It was a step toward reclaiming my sense of self, even amid the wreckage of my decisions. Just as I was about to leave, a sharp pain shot through the back of my head, and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was in a dimly lit room, with only a single light bulb hanging above. My head throbbed with pain, and when I tried to stand, my legs gave way, sending me crashing to the floor. Confusion and pain overwhelmed me as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. Faint, muffled sounds reached my ears, and I crawled toward the noise. I reached a metal door with a small window. Using it for support, I managed to pull myself to my feet just as the latch clicked open. To my horror, Brian stood in the doorway, a grin plastered across his face. "Is my wife scared of the dark?" he taunted, clearly enjoying my fear. I pleaded with him, begging to be let out, insisting that this cruel joke had gone too far, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. He coldly informed me that this was my punishment for defying his mother. He claimed he would keep me locked away, cutting me off from the world as retribution. The reality of my situation sank in as he mocked me further, pointing out my isolation and lack of family support. His words deepened my despair, but then I felt my phone in my pocket. It was broken, yes, but not completely dead. The screen faintly glowed, offering me a slim chance to call for help. In that dark, cold basement, fear mixed with a surge of resolve. How had my life spiraled into this nightmare, just for standing up to unjust treatment? But amid the despair, the possibility of contacting my dad sparked a tiny glimmer of hope. Memorizing my dad's number, a lifeline I never expected to need, I dialed it with shaking hands, tears blurring my vision. My voice trembled as I recounted the terrifying ordeal, clinging to the hope that he could rescue me from this nightmare. 3 agonizing days passed, and just as despair was beginning to claim me, the sound of a car outside sparked a faint glimmer of hope. My heart raced as I listened for footsteps. The door finally swung open, and there stood my dad, his presence a towering force of reassurance. Relief flooded through me, mingled with disbelief. He had come to my rescue, bringing the police with him. Brian was taken into custody, and his attempts to fabricate excuses fell flat. Their fate in court loomed ominously as they faced the consequences of their actions. "You have no idea what awaits you," my dad said, his voice firm, his disappointment and anger clear. Despite their lies, the truth was undeniable. As we left the dark confines of that basement, I felt a surge of courage. This harrowing experience, though painful, illuminated my strength and my dad's unshakable support. I vowed to stand tall against any future adversities, determined to reclaim my autonomy and voice. Moving to Jacksonville with my dad marked a fresh start, leaving behind the shadows of Texas. This ordeal had taught me a valuable lesson: to be cautious with online connections and the realities behind screens. Though this chapter of my life had closed on a grim note, ahead lay the promise of healing and empowerment, with my dad's steadfast support lighting the way.
My father has been expanding and generating profits within the company founded by my grandfather. Recently, he promised to transfer a luxurious villa, a mansion, to me. However, I've come to the realization that what's rightfully yours should also be mine as your husband. This mansion is now mine, and I plan to hire you as a housemaid. If you're not on board with that, well, you can always consider divorce. As it turns out, despite the mansion supposedly being in my name, my husband had clandestinely inscribed his own name on the legal papers. Does he genuinely believe that's acceptable? Does he comprehend the potential consequences of such actions? My name is Aaron, and while I don't intend to boast, I was born into a wealthy family. My father, the CEO of several companies, inherited the business from my grandfather, who initially started a small shop repairing and selling TVs and music systems. Over time, the company flourished, expanding into various branches and diversifying into the IT sector. My father's foresight, selling computers and accessories before they gained widespread popularity, proved to be a lucrative move. Besides IT, he ventured into real estate, collaborating with local businesses and actively contributing to community development. My mother served as the vice president of the company, and after studying it in college, I joined the family business. Despite the outward appearance of affluence, we didn't live as extravagantly as portrayed in TV dramas. My father believed in instilling good values, rejecting the notion that spoiling a child aids in their responsible growth. Our family home was spacious, and we had a maid, but as a child, I actively participated in household chores. Dining at fancy restaurants occurred infrequently, and our international travels were limited to once a year, with the majority being local trips. My school life seemed quite ordinary, and it would have been challenging for anyone to guess that my family was affluent. Due to my unassuming demeanor, I dated guys within my age group, just like any other girl. Among them, Michael, who later became my husband, was one of my colleagues at the same workplace. During those times, I worked as a sales representative and office manager at an IT-related shop, and Michael was also a sales rep there. I chose not to disclose that my father was the CEO to my coworkers, making it easier for Michael to approach me. I noticed that he was straightforward and had no reservations. Although I didn't seek extravagance, I'd always suggested places within Michael's budget. During our dates at restaurants, he would order generously, explaining that if there's extra, he'd eat it, opting for a cost-effective approach to enjoy a hearty meal. Some might have considered him a bit frugal, but I found it endearing. Unbeknownst to him, I earned several times more than he did, content with my fair compensation for the responsibilities I held. I unconsciously became accommodating. Michael, always keen on budget-friendly ways to satisfy his appetite, received my gestures with gratitude. During our dates, I'd often bought extra food or thoughtful gifts, knowing he would appreciate them. When shopping for clothes, I would add extra socks for him. And on occasions when I got a new bedspread, I'd include pajamas and a pillow for him. I genuinely enjoyed making him happy. Even when visiting his home, I willingly cooked for him and took care of the cleanup. Out of the blue, Michael proposed to me one day, expressing that there was no one better than me. At that moment, I hesitated, harboring reservations. After all, my father was the CEO of a major company, and he held a prominent position at my current workplace. I feared that if Michael were to discover this, he might reconsider our relationship. Deciding to take Michael to my parents' home for the first time, I aimed to introduce him to my family and disclose everything about our background. If he accepted it all, I would be more than willing to marry him. As Michael's inaugural visit to my family home approached, he appeared visibly nervous. However, my dad, though strict on occasion, generally exuded a calm demeanor. When I presented Michael as the man I was contemplating marrying, my father welcomed him with a warm smile, alleviating some of Michael's tension. Although surprised to learn about my father's CEO status, Michael managed to navigate the visit smoothly with my father's supportive demeanor. Upon leaving the house, Michael exclaimed about the enormity and magnificence of the residence, expressing gratitude for my father's kindness. He even suggested that we could get along well. When I casually mentioned my dad's ownership of additional buildings and a vacation home, Michael appeared more astonished. Despite the revelation, he resolved to marry me, the daughter of such a prominent man, and I agreed wholeheartedly. Eventually, we became a married couple. However, something bothered me. At the moment of accepting his proposal, I noticed a slightly mischievous grin on Michael's face for a split second. Dismissing it as his quirky way of smiling, I didn't dwell on it, but perhaps had I paid more attention, I could have averted the impending tragedy. As Michael and I moved into a typical, not overly luxurious apartment, he seemed to grasp the significance of my father's status. Yet I never explicitly disclosed my income, maintaining a modest lifestyle. Gradually, Michael's demeanor changed after settling in. While I balanced work and household responsibilities, he started demanding more. One evening, as I prepared dinner, he asked, "What's for dinner tonight?" In response, I informed him that I had prepared his favorite curry rice. However, to my surprise, he appeared dissatisfied as he sat on the sofa. Letting out a sigh, he expressed his desire for something like a prime beef steak once in a while. This caught me off guard, as he had never complained about my cooking before. I pointed out that prime beef was quite expensive, but he clicked his tongue in annoyance, insisting that, considering my father's earnings, indulging in prime beef occasionally should not be a big deal. Reluctantly, I agreed to get prime beef for the next day. Michael smirked, stating that we should be able to enjoy such things normally from now on. While my salary could afford such luxuries, my previous lifestyle had instilled a reluctance to spend so extravagantly. However, to avoid issues early in our marriage, I resigned myself to the decision to actually cook prime beef steak. Unfortunately, Michael's lavish tendencies did not stop there. He frequently requested expensive ingredients for meals and specified upscale restaurants when we went out. His cravings extended beyond food, manifesting in desires for a TV larger than 60 inches and even suggesting we should purchase a massage chair for the sake of relaxation after work. These remarks became more frequent, and I began to feel that it was getting out of hand. I questioned the need for such extravagant items, expressing my concern about the expenses involved. Frustrated, I finally retorted, asking him if he thought we were made of money. I challenged his extravagant lifestyle, stating that living so lavishly was unnecessary. In response, Michael made a displeased face and clicked his tongue again, expressing his discontent. He argued that, as the husband, he contributed to the household expenses and insisted that I should listen to him. However, his statements puzzled me, as his contributions, while appreciated, did not amount to a lavish sum. In fact, I contributed more, a fact I never disclosed to him. Despite my substantial financial input, he made these assertions without hesitation. This change in Michael's behavior left me questioning his mindset. He was not like this before, and I couldn't comprehend why he had changed at that moment. I found myself in a state of confusion, unable to comprehend Michael's recent behavior. In response to his audacious requests, I decided to temporarily appease the situation by telling him, "All right, I'll think about it." Little did I know that the explanation for his bold behavior would become apparent just a few days later. On that particular day, my father summoned me to the office of our shop where I worked, claiming that he had something important to discuss. While Michael was engrossed in his work, my father entered the office and initiated a serious conversation. He expressed uncertainty about how much longer he could continue as the CEO and hinted at the possibility of me taking over in the future. Furthermore, he mentioned transferring the vacation home to me. This vacation home, briefly mentioned to Michael earlier, resembled a large lodge located about a 30-minute drive away. It was a place where my father used to host gatherings with town shop owners, under the guise of meetings. Although such meetings were no longer held, the house was consistently ready to be lived in, maintained by a housekeeper. My father offered me the freedom to use the vacation home however I wanted. This proposition left me torn. as I had no concrete idea of how to utilize such a property. The vacation home boasted over 6,000 square feet, with a lavish garden surrounded by nature, akin to a mansion. Lacking the social connections to host significant parties, I contemplated keeping it as an asset. I conveyed to my father that I would positively consider his proposal but needed more time to make a decision. He assured me there was no rush and left a contract on the desk before departing the shop. Returning home after work, I leaned towards accepting the mansion, intending to give it further thought the next day. However, the following day brought an unexpected turn of events. Upon arriving at work, I discovered that Michael, who typically arrived before me, was absent from the shop. Intrigued, I entered the office only to find him there. Instinctively, I asked, "What are you doing here?" To my surprise, he flashed a document in my face, stating, "I overheard the conversation about the mansion yesterday. Sounds like an amazing deal, right?" Dumbfounded by Michael's audacious move, I reluctantly signed the document he flaunted, a contract my father had handed me just the day before. Shockingly, Michael had inscribed his own name on it. I was utterly taken aback and couldn't help but express my disbelief. "What on earth are you doing?" I questioned him, but Michael, without a hint of remorse, casually responded, "Why not? Your dad said he's giving away an amazing mansion, right? If you won't decide, I figured I'd take it." He said this with a smirk, but there was no way I could accept it. Persistently, I pleaded with him, emphasizing the house's worth of $4 million and my father's intention to give it to me. However, Michael dismissed my concerns with a nonchalant laugh. $4 million bucks? Dan, that's impressive. Think about it. I have the right to this mansion because you're my wife, and I'm your husband, so I have a right to what's yours. Moreover, your dad really likes me. He probably won't have any complaints. So from today, this villa is my house. If you live in a wealthy house, you've got to make use of it. How about I hire you as a maid in this mansion? If you have any complaints, I'll divorce you anytime, he confidently declared. It was at that moment when I recalled Michael's past actions and words, and everything finally clicked. He seemingly had no qualms about taking from others, even if it meant practically stealing without feeling guilty. During our dating days, I always showered him with gifts, but he never reciprocated. My giving nature might have corrupted him, leading him to believe that what was mine was automatically his. My dad's kindness to Michael likely made him feel my father was easy to manipulate, and perhaps he perceived me as even more gullible. With a plan forming in my mind, I decided to confront him. I declared, "Fine then. This mansion is yours, but I'm not going to be your maid. Let's get a divorce. Take care." After that, I returned to my job and, during my lunch break, called a divorce lawyer to initiate the process. Michael, seemingly unfazed, responded with bravado, claiming he was fine with it and canceling the lease on his current place. Little did he know that tragedy was about to hit him, and he just hadn't realized it yet. Later, I went back to my parents' place and shared everything with my father. From that point on, everything unfolded according to my plan. A few weeks later, Michael called me in a state of panic, having received an enormous bill. While his shock was understandable, it was only fair, considering the fixed property tax on the $4 million house he had claimed as his own. I casually informed Michael that he should expect to pay around that much for the property tax. However, he appeared utterly clueless, lacking knowledge that paying tax on owned property is common. Normally, my father would have covered the tax if he had received the property, but upon hearing the entire story, my usually calm father was furious. Despite my warnings about my father's strict nature, he declared he can have it if he can afford it, and accepted the property transfer to Michael. To be honest, a part of me wanted Michael to learn a tough lesson, and there was no way he could afford the hefty amount. Frustrated with Michael's persistent pleas, I decided to deliver a final blow. The annual property tax, I revealed, amounted to about $60,000. It dawned on me that Michael always had a mindset of trying to take advantage of his friends, possibly driving them away and leaving him without anyone to teach him common sense. Acknowledging that I may have been a bit unreasonable, I admitted that my once cute perception of Michael had drastically changed. Without any sympathy left, I hung up the phone. Subsequently, Michael couldn't sustain living in the house and faced forced eviction. Realizing he couldn't afford it, my father reverted the property deed back to my name, incurring the gift tax himself. Meanwhile, Michael faced severe consequences. He was fired from his job and charged with unlawfully changing the property deed. He received scoldings from his parents and was shunned by acquaintances. Now jobless and friendless, he barely scraped by in a rundown apartment, working odd jobs. His parents were even considering disowning him. As for me, I've been gradually preparing to take over my father's company. My father once told me that success in business doesn't come from looking for shortcuts. Reflecting on the fact that I almost married Michael, I deeply understand the truth in his words. Inspired by my father's greatness, I push forward every day in my involvement in running the business. Finally, free from any more baggage. Today marks the beginning of our life together with my parents at my house. However, as soon as my parents passed away, my husband, who had demolished our family home, dropped a bombshell on me. Standing in front of the now non-existent house, he declared, "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind too? Come to our house with the inheritance. Quick." His words left me dumbfounded, and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ah, I see. That's what this was all about. Perplexed, my husband, Howard, and my in-laws looked at me incredulously. What? Why are you laughing? I revealed the truth to them. My name is Deborah Jackson. I was born into an ordinary salaried worker family. I married Howard at 29, raised 2 children, and now, at 55, I expected a quiet life with my husband. But life took an unexpected turn. I recounted the challenges of caring for my ailing parents, particularly my mother's battle with cancer. Despite my efforts, my husband's reaction to living with my sick mother was unexpected and less than supportive. I suggested living with my mother for her sake, but Howard was reluctant. His complaints about meals, cleaning, and laundry were hurtful. Despite the challenges, we moved to my family home to care for my mother, even though Howard's initial attitude remained unchanged. As time passed, my mother's health deteriorated, leading to her hospitalization and eventual passing. Despite the emotional turmoil, Howard's lack of support during the funeral preparations left me deeply disappointed. In times like these, one wishes for their spouse's support. However, Howard was off to the side with his parents, not helping with the funeral preparations. Even during the funeral, he remained at the back of the relatives section. "Howard, I wish you would sit in the family area." I couldn't help but wish for the support that never came. When I suggested that Howard should sit with me in the family area during my mother's funeral, he responded, "No, I'm fine here. I'm not a blood relative after all." His mother, who was listening, interjected, "He's your husband, but not your mother's son, right? Howard is my son, so he's an outsider. An outsider, that's right. Howard's parents are just us. Deborah should sit in the family area alone." Even his parents echoed the sentiment, stating that Howard should not be in the family area. While seating arrangements for family members may vary by region, in our area, it's customary for sons-in-law to sit in the family area. Predictably, with Howard not in the family area, distant relatives started whispering and speculating about our relationship. After the funeral, we returned home with my brother's family, children, Howard, and his parents. Despite their insensitive remarks, I thanked Howard's parents for coming and served them coffee. However, their callousness reached new heights when they casually remarked about the condolence money being tough on them, implying relief at the end of the financial burden with my mother's passing. Stunned by their words, I forced a smile and left the room. Overhearing Howard and his parents' conversation, I learned more about their true feelings. Howard complained about living with someone else, and his parents joined in mocking me. It wasn't the first time. They had always been disrespectful, even during our marriage. Reflecting on their lack of concern during my father's funeral and mother's death, I questioned Howard's behavior as a person. I realized that I had been overly considerate of him, feeling guilty for imposing the living arrangement. Angry and resentful, I silently listened to their laughter and chatter. Later, in a conversation between Howard and his parents, they openly disapproved of my defiance regarding my mother's belongings. When they tried to take my mother's bag, I firmly refused, stating my intention to distribute her keepsakes among family members later. This led to a heated argument, with Howard and his parents leaving angrily, labeling me an outsider. Despite explaining the situation to everyone, Howard didn't return home for some time. When he finally did, he surprised me by showing concern and suggesting a trip for me and the kids, even providing travel vouchers. Though unexpected, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions, including gratitude and confusion, at this unexpected gesture from Howard. "I wonder if your father felt guilty," I said with a laugh as I decided to gratefully accept the travel vouchers from Howard. "Well, I'll beat off then." "Yeah, take your time. Since you're at it, stay over at the kids' places," Howard suggested. "I can't be away that long," I replied. "Just go. I'll relax at my parents' house. Don't worry about me," Howard said, sending me off with those words. Julia was happy to have me over. So before the trip, I visited Julia's and then Luke's homes, having been unable to visit while caring for my mother. I helped out a bit by making and freezing some meals for them. "Mom, you don't get to relax at all, but thank you. It really helps." They both expressed gratitude for my home-cooked meals. This was all thanks to Howard's suggestion. Then came the long-awaited trip, and I spent a relaxing time at the hotel with my children. It seemed to heal much of the fatigue and sorrow from caregiving and losing my parents. I was away for nearly a week, but both kids returned to their homes with bright smiles. "That was fun. We should thank Dad once in a while," Julia suggested. "Really? Once in a while? But I wonder if he's up to something," I laughed, half-jokingly. "Don't say that. Your father must have had his reasons," Julia replied. I laughed as well, planning to share the memories with Howard and start afresh in our married life. However, upon arriving home, I was at a loss for words. "What's going on? The house is..." I looked around in confusion, checking my location. Despite being a familiar place, our family home was gone. Then Howard appeared from nowhere, with his parents behind him, smirking at my dumbfounded expression. "Howard, what's the meaning of this?" I asked. Howard, like his parents, replied with an eerie smile. "Finally, the baggage is gone. From today, we'll be living with my parents at my house." "What are you talking about?" I retorted calmly to Howard's arrogant statement. Then Howard spoke. "Lost your mind? Your family home has been demolished. Come to our house with the inheritance. Already, everything you inherited belongs to Howard." I realized what had happened. The disappearance of my house was Howard's doing, all for the sake of inheritance. Despite being overwhelmed with frustration and sadness, I couldn't let Howard have his way. "No way," I thought to myself. I burst into laughter at their smirking faces. "What? Why are you laughing? What a strange woman. Has she gone mad?" My mother-in-law looked at me as if I were something eerie. I faced them and spoke up. "Don't you guys know?" "Know what?" I then said to Howard, "First of all, I didn't inherit a single penny, so there's no inheritance." I started laughing again after saying this. Maybe they thought they had become rich through inheritance. Their wild imaginations and actions were simply laughable to me. "What do you mean? Explain yourself?" Howard demanded an explanation, but I remained silent. I thought there was no need to enlighten them before that. "I'm not going to live with strangers. If you want to live together, do it alone." Ignoring Howard's question and rejecting his initial proposition, my mother-in-law flared up in anger. You helped with your parents' household, but you won't do ours. You know why I did that, right? I agreed to live together, didn't I? I said we didn't need to live together, but you chose to do so because you didn't want to do housework. My rebuttal left Howard and my mother-in-law biting their lips in frustration and demolishing my family home on your own. There are things you can and can't do. I yelled at them on the spot, then left the scene. Behind me, Howard's voice called out, "Where are you going?" However, I didn't turn back. I had to secure a place to sleep for the night, and I didn't want to see Howard's face. I immediately consulted a lawyer. It couldn't be that easy to demolish a house. The house was still in my mother's name. When I wondered which company had taken the job, an unbelievable truth came to light. Howard and my father-in-law had directly demolished the house themselves. They had meticulously prepared, enlisting the help of acquaintances from my father-in-law's demolition company and renting heavy machinery. Moreover, they had given me the travel vouchers to drive me out. The realization of being utterly deceived brought tears to my eyes and filled me with frustration. Is there any way to punish the three of them? I asked the lawyer through tears, and he smiled kindly. Your husband, who demolished the house registered under your mother's name without permission, can be charged with criminal damage and sued for compensation. Let's start by demanding a proper apology from your husband and his parents. I nodded at his words, and the lawyer promptly started the proceedings. A few days later, an irate call came from Howard. What's this letter of demand about? Oh, you received it. Since you destroyed our important house, you'll have to compensate for it. Compensate. I told you we were moving into the family home. I demolished an unused house for you. You should be grateful, not demanding compensation. Just bring your inheritance and come back home. Howard arrogantly insisted. Grateful for being demolished? Really? And about the inheritance coming home? There's none to bring since I didn't inherit anything. I shouted back over the phone. Howard fell silent, seemingly stunned by my outburst. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was precisely this. I had a whole year to spend with my mother. It was obvious we would have discussed the inheritance. Then I said, I don't need anything. Give it all to my brother. Thus, all cash and securities were inherited by my brother. He said that I should get the house since he lived far away and couldn't manage it. If I wasn't going to live there, it could be rented out to someone else. That was the plan for me to inherit the house anyway. Either you and your father restore the family home to its original state or pay the amount written there. This amount, I'm being kind enough to suggest a settlement. If you can't pay, I'll file a police report and sue you, I spoke firmly. Sorry, I didn't think you'd be so angry. Of course, Howard replied. I'm angry. Howard began making excuses. He thought that as long as the family home was there, he couldn't live with his parents, especially since his father had always wanted to live with us. My father-in-law was fond of Luke and seemed to have wanted to live with him. He had refused to live together back then because it would have made commuting difficult, but his parents seemed to think I was the one opposed to it. So it turns out that Howard had convinced his parents to agree to this plan by demolishing my family home and making them believe I would move in with the inheritance. But even knowing this now, there's no way I can forgive it. So please forgive me. I didn't mean any harm. Dad is remorseful too. If he's truly remorseful, then he'll agree to the settlement. I said this and hung up the phone. Howard kept calling me and sending messages to apologize. If you're sorry, then hurry up and transfer the money. I pushed Howard away with these words. I knew our family home couldn't be restored, but there was no other way to alleviate these unbearable feelings. Afterward, I stayed at Julia's house. My brother's family and my children knew about this. Even though my brother must have been angry about our family home being demolished without his consent, he said, I won't interfere, but I'll lend a hand. Do what you think is right, Deborah. Everyone condemned Howard's actions and supported me. A month passed without any payment for the damages or compensation. During that time, there was no contact from Howard. I couldn't keep relying on Julia's hospitality forever. I wanted to receive the money soon and at least establish a stable living situation. But contrary to my wishes, something unbelievable happened. It was revealed by a comment from Julia. "This apron looks a lot like Grandma's," she muttered while showing me her smartphone screen. I was shocked when I saw the screen. It was a product page on a flea market app. The item Julia thought resembled my mother's apron was a unique piece I had made for my mother. "What? This is Grandma's apron. I made it, so there's no mistake, really," Julia said and hurriedly checked other pages. The seller seemed to have registered recently, with no transactions or ratings yet. As I checked the content of the nearly 30 items listed, I was shocked to find that they all belonged to my mother. I immediately realized it must be Howard's doing. No one else but Howard, who had demolished the house, could have taken my mother's belongings. I called Howard right away. "What's this about the app, Howard?" Howard responded, sounding annoyed. Thinking he was playing dumb, I angrily confronted him. "Don't play dumb. You're selling Mom's belongings, aren't you? Cancel the listings right now." Howard sounded panicked as he replied, "What? No, it's not me. Who else would do such a thing? I'm coming over to get everything back." I hung up and immediately went to Howard's parents' house with Julia. Upon arriving at Howard's parents' house, I immediately called out to Howard. He came out to meet us at the entrance, where I confronted him. "I don't know anything about it," Howard said. "Dad, tell the truth." Julia, supporting me, also pressed Howard for answers. He was visibly flustered. While this was happening, Howard's parents, perhaps realizing we were there, showed up too. "Oh, Julia, you're here?" She smiled happily upon seeing Julia. Julia, clearly upset, spoke to her grandmother. "Tell Dad to tell the truth. The truth. It seems like Dad is selling the stuff Grandma passed away." With hearing this, my mother-in-law laughed. Howard looked troubled and kept repeating, "It's not me." Then my mother-in-law spoke loudly. "Howard's selling them? That can't be true. But because I'm the one selling them." I felt the blood drain from my face at her words. Howard must have known. He looked at his mother with a "this is bad" expression. Julia was stunned, but my mother-in-law seemed cheerful. "What did you say? It's quite a task, you know. Packaging has to be done carefully, and the photos need to be taken well." She talked about the app as if it was a fun hobby, not realizing she was selling stolen items. I struggled to contain my anger. "Cancel the listing. That's not something Grandma can just sell." Julia, red-faced and teary-eyed, appealed to her grandmother, but my mother-in-law seemed displeased. "What's the big deal? I found a fun hobby. I use what I can, and the rest makes a nice little income. It's good for preventing dementia after all. I'm the only grandma left. And Julia, you want me to stay healthy and live long, right?" My mother-in-law said this nonchalantly. It was clear she wouldn't listen to our pleas. But if talking won't work, we'll have to take action. "Let's go home, Julia." "But it's okay." I left the house, dragging Julia with me. And so, I rushed to the police station. I had not planned to file a report about the house being demolished, but theft was a different matter altogether. When I reported the theft and unauthorized sale of my mother's belongings to the police, they promptly took action. The flea market app company cooperated, and my mother-in-law's account was suspended. This ensured that no more items would be sold. On my way back from the police station, I called Howard. "I had your mother's account suspended. You knew about this, didn't you? You're complicit." "No, I've filed a police report. Please cooperate with the investigation." Howard became frantic at my words. "What? We're family, aren't we? Please withdraw it. Strangers, right? I still haven't received any compensation or damages for the house being demolished, and I see no remorse from you." I was angry, and Howard was at a loss for words. But I am not heartless. Despite everything, I had shared a life with Howard for a long time. Sighing, I realized that there might still be a long road ahead to resolve all these issues. I said I'll wait for the money, but I won't forgive the theft. Everything must be returned. And Howard, your father looked very ill. Has he been to the hospital? What? I'm not heartless, so I'm just letting you know. I said this and hung up the phone. I had seen my father-in-law earlier, and he hadn't spoken much. He was much thinner than when I last saw him a few months ago, and his face was pasty and unnaturally dark. It was clear that he was not in good health, but I doubted that the family had noticed. My mother-in-law was nonchalantly trying to sell stolen items, and Howard was only bold towards me. That parent and child simply lacked any sense of consideration for others. The next day, my father-in-law called me. I thought he might thank me, but it was the exact opposite. You're treating me like a sick person, planning to dump me in a hospital to get rid of me, huh? I have to protect Howard and your mother from you. I'm not going to any hospital, he scolded. I was concerned for him, yet this was how he responded. I apologize if it was out of line. I was just concerned, I'm not weak and short-lived like your parents. Don't patronize me. I was angry at his words, but a few days later, he apparently felt unwell and went to the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Howard called me in a panic. Dad has terminal cancer. What should I do? I snorted. That's none of my concern. Remember what you said when I suggested the hospital. You said you're not weak and short-lived like my parents. Deal with it yourself. How can you be so heartless? Who's the heartless one? Did you ever say a kind word when my mother was sick? Reflect on your own actions. I said this and ended the call. As expected, my father-in-law passed away not long after. As a human being, I didn't want to harbor negative feelings towards someone who had passed, but recalling all that had been done and said, I couldn't shed a single tear. After the funeral, a will was found. Despite his claims of not being short-lived, my father-in-law had been thoroughly prepared. The house is to be inherited by my grandson Luke. The rest of my estate is to be divided between my wife and eldest son, it stated. I was surprised to see Luke's name. My father-in-law had always favored Luke, expressing a desire to live with him. Now he must have wanted Luke to live in the house even after his passing. For Luke, this was an unwelcome burden. Renounce the inheritance. You don't want that house, do you? I told Luke, but he was actually pleased to inherit the house. Inheriting the house would only mean paying inheritance taxes, with no real benefit for Luke. However, if he was happy with it, it wasn't my place to say anything. As per his grandfather's will, Luke inherited the house. My mother-in-law was delighted and paid the inheritance tax. He's our heir, after all, she said. Well, that wasn't wrong. I felt a bit down, feeling like Luke was taken from me. But then something unbelievable happened. Come to our house, responding to Howard's message, I immediately went to his parents' house. There, like me once stood, my mother-in-law and Howard, frozen in front of their house. On the property, there were heavy machines, trucks with the demolition company's name, and workers all demolishing the house. What's going on? It's my house. I can do whatever I want with it, right? Luke, who appeared out of nowhere, seemed pleased watching the house being demolished. Luke, what are you doing? Stop it right now. Even if I stop now, we can't live there anyway, Mom. Luke, what have you done? My mother-in-law and Howard pleaded with Luke, but he just laughed. Have you forgotten what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom, Luke? Grandma, you were horrible to Mom too, right? Did you apologize? Luke, his smile gone, glared sharply at his mother and Howard. They fell to their knees as the machines continued to loudly demolish the house. I felt relieved seeing the scene. Later, Howard, having finally received the inheritance, paid the compensation and damages. It seemed that Luke had recovered the stolen items my mother-in-law took from my mother, and they were safely returned to me. Mom, you've got me and Julia, Luke said, and I finally shed tears of relief. Howard and his mother lost their house and were left with no money, now living again in company housing. Howard and I had moved out of the company housing, and now Howard, along with his mother, had returned, becoming the talk of the town. A wife of Howard's colleague, with whom I am on good terms, contacted me. and I explained everything honestly. They'll likely live uncomfortably in the company housing now, but it's their own doing. Furthermore, with Howard's retirement, the two will need to save up for their future living arrangements. I might occasionally ask friends for updates on their situation, just for a story to share. I continue to stay at Julia's house, but Luke is now planning to get married and build a house. The land from his parents' house sold for a decent amount, surprisingly making the demolished house useful. Mom, come live with us. Luke even invited me to live with them. His soon-to-be wife welcomed the idea warmly. I couldn't impose on Julia forever, so I gratefully accepted Luke's offer. I resolved to be a different kind of mother-in-law, hoping to live happily with my new family.
I sat on the old, worn-out couch, a piece of furniture that once held memories of laughter and late-night movies. Now, it was a reminder of a time when life was lighter, happier. The room around me felt heavy, thick with the weight of the past. Upstairs, my 4-year-old daughter, Anna, was fast asleep, her gentle breaths a sharp contrast to the tension lingering in our home. I glanced at the clock. Past 11 p.m. Charles was late again, as he often was these days. Finally, the sound of the key turning in the lock broke the silence. I stood up, smoothing my shirt out of habit, though I wasn't sure why I still bothered. "Charles," I called softly as he stepped inside, looking more like a stranger than the man I once knew. "You're late." He didn't look at me, only grunted. "Work." His voice, once warm and familiar, now felt cold and distant. I tried to keep my tone casual, though a knot tightened in my chest. "Anna asked about you today. She wanted to know when Daddy would be home." Charles shrugged off his coat and hung it carelessly on the rack. "Kids ask a lot of things. Doesn't mean we always have the answers." His indifference stung. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Maybe we could do something this weekend. Just the three of us." "Anna would love that." Charles scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "A family outing? With everything going on? Don't be naive, Betty." My hands trembled slightly, but I held on to the conversation, desperate to reach him. "This isn't the Charles I married. She needs her father, Charles. It's important." He walked to the fridge, pulling out a beer without even looking at me. "What she needs is a miracle, not me pretending to be a happy family at the park." I felt my eyes well up. "She's your daughter, Charles. How can you be so cold?" He took a long drink, his gaze fixed on anything but me. "I'm being realistic, Betty. This isn't the life I wanted. A sick child, a house that feels more like a hospital." I followed him into the kitchen, my voice rising with emotion. "And what about me? Do you think I enjoy watching our daughter suffer? Do you think this is the life I dreamed of?" He slammed the beer bottle on the counter, the sound echoing in the tense silence. "I don't know, Betty, I really don't. But I know I can't do this anymore." A surge of anger coursed through me. "You want to walk away from your own child?" He downed the rest of his beer in one gulp. "I need space. I can't handle this. Suffocation." The word felt like a punch to the gut. Suffocation. Is that what your family is to you now? He turned away, shoulders tense. "It's not just that, Betty. It's everything. The constant hospital visits, the medical bills, the way our lives revolve around Anna's illness. I didn't sign up for this." I stared at him, speechless. "So, what's your plan, Charles? Leave us? Start over somewhere else?" He didn't respond, just walked past me, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. I stood there, emotions swirling, anger, sadness, betrayal. Later that night, I lay in bed, the space next to me cold and empty. From the other room, I heard the faint sound of Charles's TV. The divide between us felt too wide to bridge, and I couldn't help but wonder if it ever could be crossed again. The man I married, once my partner and Anna's father, now felt like a stranger under the same roof. Our home, typically a haven of warmth, stood in stark contrast to the sterile hospital room where Anna lay. Sitting beside her tiny bed, I held her small hand, drawing strength from her peaceful sleep. Nurse Sharon entered with a kind smile. "How's our brave girl doing today, Betty?" "She's a fighter," I managed, though my voice was weary. Sharon checked Anna's vitals with gentle efficiency. "She's in good hands here." The surgery team is one of the best. I nodded, throat tight. I just wish Charles could be here more. She keeps asking for him. Sharon's expression softened. Fathers often find it hard to cope with these situations, but you're doing an amazing job. The weight of loneliness settled on me. It's hard doing it alone. He's just not the same anymore. As if on cue, Charles walked in. His presence was less comforting than I had hoped. He glanced at Anna, then at me, his expression unreadable. "How is she?" "The same," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He fiddled with his phone, avoiding my gaze. "I can't stay long. Work's crazy." A flash of anger surged through me. Work. Right, because that's what's important right now. Charles looked up, his eyes cold. "What do you want from me, Betty? To sit here and watch her sleep?" I bit back a retort, focusing instead on Anna. "She asked for you today, Charles. She misses her dad." He shrugged, the detachment between us a tangible wall. "I'm here, aren't I?" Before I could respond, Anna stirred, her voice weak but clear. "Daddy?" Charles's face softened as he moved closer to her. "Hey, princess. Daddy's here." Anna managed a faint smile, reaching out to him. "Stay with me, Daddy." A mix of hope and sorrow twisted in my heart as Charles hesitated, then sat on the edge of her bed. "I can't stay long, Anna. Daddy has to work." Her smile faded, an understanding far beyond her years in her eyes. "It's okay, Daddy. I love you," Anna whispered, her small hand clutching Charles's as he forced a smile in response. "I love you too, kiddo." As he stood to leave, a surge of resentment welled up inside me. "She needs you, Charles. We need you." He paused, his back turned to us, and replied, "I'm doing what I can, Betty," but his words felt hollow in the sterile room. I watched him walk away, a familiar sense of abandonment settling over me like a heavy fog. Anna squeezed my hand, her presence reminding me of the fight ahead. The room fell silent, save for the steady beeping of the monitors. Leaning closer to Anna, I whispered promises of better days, promises I wasn't sure I could keep. But in that moment, all I had was hope and my unwavering love for my daughter. The silence was broken by my friend Marilyn's call. I sat in the dimly lit hospital cafeteria, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee as my mind whirled with betrayal and shock. Marilyn slid into the seat across from me, her expression a mix of concern and urgency. "Charles is selling our house," she said, and I felt anger and disbelief swirl within me, feeling a determination I hadn't felt in months. "Betty, I can't believe he's going this far. Selling your house while you're anchored here with Anna," she continued, and I inhaled sharply, my hands trembling as I struggled to calm myself. "Marilyn, please try to delay the sale. I need some time to figure this out." Her expression hardened with resolve. "I'll do everything I can, Betty, but you need to know he's insisting on closing quickly." I leaned in, my voice steady with newfound determination. "He won't succeed without a fight. He thinks he can just erase our lives and start anew." Marilyn squeezed my hand in solidarity. "What's your plan, Betty?" The word plan echoed in my head, igniting a fire within me. For too long, I had been passive, a spectator in my own life, overshadowed by Charles's indifference. No more. I'm taking a stand. First thing tomorrow, I'm meeting with a lawyer. We'll find a way to halt the sale. Encouragement lit up Marilyn's face. "That's the spirit. Fight for what's yours, Betty. I'm with you every step of the way." I nodded, my resolve bolstered by her support. "I'll also need solid evidence, proof of his duplicity, any fraudulent dealings, anything that will strengthen our case." Marilyn proposed we start by scrutinizing the sale details. "I'll gather all the information I can," I replied, feeling a sense of purpose wash over me. I focused on the buyer and any irregularities in the deal as I took a bitter sip of my coffee, its harshness mirroring the turmoil inside me. After everything we had been through, I couldn't believe he was capable of this, both to Anna and to me. Marilyn tightened her grip on my hand, her voice filled with resolve. "He's a coward for underestimating your strength, Betty, and he'll soon realize his mistake." Rising from our seats, my determination solidified. "He'll regret this, Marilyn. He'll regret harming Anna and trying to steal our home. I'll see to that." Marilyn stood by me, fierce and unwavering. "Let's turn the tables on him, Betty. Let's show him he messed with the wrong woman." Concealed just outside the realtor's office, my heart raced as I eavesdropped on the meeting inside. Charles was there, smooth-talking the potential buyers with his usual charm. The carefree laughter of his mistress echoed, blissfully unaware of the storm she was part of. I watched as Charles confidently presented the paperwork. This house is a gem, an absolute steal at this price, he boasted while the interested couple, eager yet cautious, nodded as they perused the documents. Everything appears to be in order, the wife commented, and Charles's mistress, decked out in vibrant red lipstick, leaned in close, chuckling. See, easy as pie, she murmured. My anger flared, but I remained focused on gathering damning evidence. The husband glanced up, inquiring, and the owner is on board with all this, Charles replied swiftly, spitting a lie that seemed almost believable. Absolutely, she's ready to move on and eager to sell quickly. My fists clenched at his blatant falsehood, my nails digging into my palms as I fought the urge to storm in. Marilyn, ever the ally in my scheme, smoothly interjected, if you're ready, we can finalize the sale right now. The couple exchanged glances and nodded. We can't pass this up. I watched in silent agony as they signed the documents, each stroke a blow against the life we had built. I remained stoic, aware that this was a moment for clear-headed action, not unchecked emotions. Charles's laughter echoed in the background, mingling with the clinking of glasses as he toasted to new beginnings with the buyers, his arm around his mistress. Then, I made my entrance into the room, causing a ripple of shock and confusion among the guests. Enjoying yourself, Charles? My voice was calm, abruptly pausing the celebration. His smile faltered. Betty, what are you doing here? His question hung in the air as I approached them with determined steps. I'm here to stop you from making a monumental mistake, I stated firmly. His mistress rolled her eyes dismissively. What are you talking about? The deal is done. I returned her gaze with a smile that was cold and devoid of friendliness. Is it now? Because I don't recall agreeing to sell my house. The buyers exchanged uneasy glances. We were told everything was in order, the husband said, his voice laced with doubt. Charles tried to regain control of the situation, stepping forward. Betty, you're confused. This is for the best. I shook my head, resolute. No, Charles. The only confusion here is yours if you think you can forge my signature and get away with it. Silence enveloped the room as Charles's complexion turned notably paler. You can't prove anything, he blurted defensively. From my bag, I produced a set of documents. Actually, I can. I held the papers tightly in my hands, feeling the weight of their significance. I have these, I declared. What you're holding are forgeries. His mistress tugged anxiously at his arm, panic creeping into her voice. Charles, what is she talking about? Tell me this isn't true. But Charles stood frozen, his suave demeanor shattered in an instant. Just then, the door swung open and 3 police officers stepped inside. One of them faced Charles directly. Charles Johnson, you're under arrest for fraud and forgery. Color drained from his face as he glanced at me, disbelief etched across his features. You called the cops? Yes, I did, I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. You broke the law, Charles, and you tried to steal my home. As the officers handcuffed him, I noticed his mistress begin to sob, her mascara running down her cheeks. The potential buyers, sensing the gravity of the situation, hurriedly gathered their belongings, eager to escape the unfolding drama. One officer turned to me. We need your statement, ma'am. I nodded, a surge of vindication coursing through me. Of course, officer. As they led Charles away, he shot me a look filled with anger and regret. But I felt no sympathy. He had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. Marilyn, witnessing the scene, smiled at me approvingly. I returned her smile, stepping out of the office with a significant weight lifted from my shoulders. I had stood up for myself and for Anna. This was just the beginning. After Charles's arrest, I found myself in my lawyer's office surrounded by law books and the heavy scent of leather. Mr. Ronald, my attorney, a no-nonsense man in his 50s with a face lined by experience, reviewed my case. Betty, your husband's actions have opened up a significant can of worms. The fraud charge is serious. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly. I know, Mr. Ronald, but I couldn't let him get away with it, not after everything. He nodded, understanding in his gaze. I respect that. Now, about the divorce and custody battle. You're in a strong position, but it won't be easy. I leaned forward, resolute. I'm ready for it. I have to do this for Anna. She deserves a stable home. He shuffled through some papers. What about alimony and child support? Given Charles's likely incarceration, it's going to be complicated. I sighed, a mix of determination and sadness in my voice. The road ahead was daunting, but I was prepared to navigate it for my daughter. Anna is my top concern. I only want what's best for her. As for Charles, he made his own decisions. Mr. Ronald gave me a firm look, seriousness etched across his face. Betty, you're a resilient woman. We'll ensure you and your daughter get the justice you deserve. Leaving his office, my phone rang. It was Charles. I hesitated but answered. What do you want, Charles? His voice was urgent. Betty, I know I've made mistakes, but please don't keep Anna away from me. I stopped in my tracks, anger building inside me. Were you thinking of Anna when you tried to sell our house? When you were spending your days with someone else? He fell silent. I lost my way, Betty, but I'm still her dad. I love her. Holding my phone tighter, I replied, love is more than just words, Charles. It's shown through actions. You've let us both down. His voice broke. I'll do anything to fix this, please. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. It's too late for that. You can see Anna, but only with supervised visits. That's final. He paused, then quietly accepted my terms. The following days were a whirlwind. I focused on ensuring Anna felt loved and stable amid the turmoil. Her laughter soothed my broken heart. One afternoon, while Anna napped, my sister Julie called. Hey Betty, how are you coping? Her voice always carried a blend of concern and strength. I'm managing, Julie. It's tough, but I'm hanging in there. Julie was quiet for a moment. I heard about Charles. I'm sorry, Betty, but I'm proud of you for standing your ground. I smiled weakly. Thanks, Julie. It's hard, but Anna needs me now more than ever. Her tone softened. And who's there for you, Betty? Her question caught me off guard. Lost in caring for Anna and the legal battle, I hadn't considered my own needs. I don't know, Julie. I haven't had the chance to think about myself. Julie replied firmly, you need to look after yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup. She was right. I'll try, Julie. It's just all so overwhelming. You're not alone. Remember that. I'm here for you, always. The next day, I visited a therapist, Dr. Scott. His office was welcoming, with gentle lighting and a comfy couch. He greeted me with a warm smile. Betty, it's good to meet you. How can I help you today? I took a deep breath and shared my worries and fears. I just feel so lost, Dr. Scott. Everything I trusted has turned upside down. He nodded, his voice soft and understanding. It's natural to feel this way after what you've experienced. It's essential to recognize that challenging times are just one chapter in the extensive narrative of your life, not the entirety of it. His words struck a chord within me, sparking a period of gradual but meaningful change. As I began to rebuild my life, I found solidarity in a support group for single parents. Despite my initial nerves at the first meeting, the sense of community was palpable. As others shared their experiences, it was a relief to know I wasn't alone. The group leader welcomed me warmly, encouraging us to support and uplift each other. I shared my own story, my voice steady yet charged with emotion. The members listened with empathy and understanding. Afterward, Abigail, one of the group members, approached me. Your story is inspiring, Betty. You're stronger than you realize, she said. Her words buoyed my spirits, and I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could transform this challenging chapter into a tale of resilience and hope. Back home, in the calm of an early morning, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me to this moment of peace. The divorce was finalized, and the documents sat on my coffee table, marking a new chapter of independence. The legal battle had been grueling, but I had fought hard against Charles for a fair share of his assets to secure a stable future for our daughter. The court ruled in our favor, and Charles was found guilty of fraud, facing serious consequences alongside his accomplice. Watching them point fingers at each other was surreal. There was no remorse, only blame. Yet despite the chaos of legal battles and emotional turmoil, there was a silver lining. Anna had recovered well from her surgery, her vibrant laughter once again filling our home and bringing warmth that had been absent for too long. As I sipped my morning coffee, I contemplated our future, one I had fiercely fought for, now bright with promise. Anna was my priority, my beacon of hope. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger than before. I looked at the photographs on the mantel, pictures of us at the park, at the zoo, our faces bright with smiles. These weren't just images. They were symbols of our resilience and our capacity to find joy even in adversity. Just then, Anna burst into the room, her hair tousled and her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mommy, are we going to the park today?" she asked eagerly. My heart swelled with love as I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to have a great day." Her laughter rang through the room as she clapped her hands in delight. Watching her play, I realized that these moments of joy and recovery were what truly mattered. The struggles, the pain, and the betrayal were behind us. Ahead lay a path filled with healing, laughter, and a new journey. So here's the deal. I'm going to buy that fancy car from you. Margareta doesn't need it. She's just a regular person. My parents mentioned they wanted a new car, and since I got married to Brandon, he's been acting pretty selfish. He's been eyeing up the nice car my parents gave me, and I've had enough of it. My name's Margareta. I'm 25, and I met Brandon in college. We've been married for 2 years now. Brandon is outgoing and popular. Unlike me, I'm shy and don't have many friends. We started talking more during college classes, then we began studying together. I never thought someone like Brandon would be interested in me, but he surprised me by asking me out. I was really happy and said yes right away. That's how our relationship started. It made sense why I liked Brandon. He was handsome, friendly, and serious about his studies. But for him, things should have been different. He had lots of cute, stylish female friends. Finding another girlfriend wouldn't have been hard for him. Once, I bravely asked him, "Do you really think I'm the right one for you?" He seemed surprised and asked why I was bringing it up. I admitted, "I'm not very confident." I wanted to know why he chose me. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I guess it's comfortable being with you." I wasn't satisfied, but before I could say anything, he seemed annoyed and started playing with his phone. Not wanting to argue, I quickly ended the conversation. "Yeah, you're right. Sorry for bringing it up." Even though I still had doubts, our relationship kept going smoothly. Time passed quickly. We finished college, got married, and moved into a condo. I got a job at a regular company while Brandon went off to do more school and research. When I told my mom we were getting married, she was really happy. She said, "That's great news." We were starting to worry. "We thought you'd introduce us to a boyfriend sooner." I felt bad for not telling them about Brandon earlier, but Mom understood. She said I've always been independent, handling things on my own. Knowing Brandon was there for me made her feel better. My parents met in college and still love each other a lot, which I admire. Dad worked hard, climbing up the ladder at a big company. Mom supported him and also pursued her passion for cooking. She became really good at it and even teaches cooking classes now. They respected each other's lives and gave each other space. Growing up with them, I learned to be independent too. I wasn't great at much except studying, so I didn't go to grad school. I wanted to be self-sufficient and start my own life soon. Even though I grew up in a well-off family, I didn't want to rely on them forever. I wanted to have a family of my own, like Mom and Dad. I hope to make them proud by having kids someday. It might sound simple, but for someone like me, it's a big goal. Once we moved in together, Brandon started acting more selfishly. He was a grad student and worked part-time, but he didn't pitch in much for our living costs. I tried bringing it up gently, saying, "Hey, Brandon, it would be really helpful if you could contribute more of your part-time earnings towards our expenses." But he just coldly replied, "I do contribute some, you know. And didn't you say you'd handle the living expenses when we moved in together, Margareta?" Brandon always talked about wanting to be a professor, which is why he went to grad school. I had assured him not to worry about money when we got married, telling him I had a good job. I murmured, "Yeah, I did say that," feeling unsure about what to say next. Brandon sighed heavily. "You wouldn't get it. Being a grad student costs a lot for socializing and stuff. Oh, and by the way, I need money for a research trip. Can you lend me $500? I'll pay you back later." Brandon's financial pressure became more common and our problems got worse. He started spending more nights away from home, leaving me waiting by the phone with cold meals in front of me. When he did come home happy for a change, I was too forgiving. He'd sometimes say things like, "Hey, Margarita, remember you wanted to go somewhere? I have tomorrow off, let's go." He'd bring up outings out of nowhere or compliment my cooking, making me feel special. Each time he was nice to me, I'd catch a glimpse of the happy married life I wanted, and it made me hesitate. But I knew this wasn't normal. I felt lonely and anxious, but I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't want to upset my parents, who were thrilled about our marriage, but they must have started to notice something wasn't right. When I finally visited my parents after a long time, Dad suggested I stay over and have dinner with them. Mom cooked a big meal to welcome me back. During dinner, Dad mentioned my Aunt Ellen had visited recently and wanted to see me. He said she's always spontaneous like that. Ellen was lively, ambitious, and independent. I'll reach out to her soon, thanks Dad. Dad mentioned how much my Aunt Ellen loved me and how she always teased about Brandon stealing me from her, even though she didn't want to get married herself. That's just how she was. Before I met Brandon, Ellen was more like a close friend than an aunt. I could talk to her about anything, even things I couldn't tell my parents. She understood me better than anyone and was always there for me. At first, I was too shy to tell her about Brandon, but I wanted to see her again and show her I was doing okay. A few days after staying with my parents, I met Ellen at a cafe. She was dressed really stylishly, as usual. Ellen checked out my outfit and said gently, "You know, Margarita, marriage is just the start of a lifelong journey for a woman. You should always feel confident and attractive, no matter what. Your clothes can make a big difference, so don't forget to take care of yourself." Then she took a sip of her tea gracefully. "I totally forgot about fashion lately. I'm sorry for not keeping in touch for so long," I murmured apologetically. Ellen replied, "That's typical of you, Margarita. It's good to be honest and serious, but being too timid usually comes from lack of experience. But I was thrilled when I heard you found someone special. I thought, finally, Margarita is taking a step forward." It had been ages since I spent time with someone outside on a day off, and the weather was perfect. We sat on the terrace, basking in the warm sunlight. In that peaceful moment, I felt like I could talk to Ellen about my worries without feeling too down. I had hoped even someone as shy as me could make it work with Brandon at first. But Ellen listened to my whole story without interrupting, just nodding kindly. When I finished, she asked, "I suppose you haven't mentioned this to your parents, have you, Margarita?" "No, I even hesitated to tell you today. I didn't want to admit my weaknesses to anyone. I thought I should be able to handle this on my own, to be truly independent. I know if Mom and Dad found out, they'd want to bring me back home right away, so I want to try to deal with this by myself as much as possible." Ellen respected my decision and didn't push further, but she added, "If you ever really need help, let me know first. If my dear Margarita asks for help, I'll be there for you no matter where I am." A month later, Mom called and said, "When you have time, could you come over? It's not urgent. Since I have the next day off, I went to see my parents. When I saw a car parked in the driveway, I couldn't contain my excitement. Dad, is this car new? Did you just get it? Dad, can I really take it for a spin? What if I crash it?" I teased, feeling excited about the fancy car. "Don't worry about that. This card is for you, Margarita. Use it however you like. It'll come in handy," Mom whispered to me. "We saw this car in a TV commercial, and you said you liked it," Dad recalled. "So it's our gift to you. You've been going through a tough time lately, so we wanted to cheer you up. If things get tough, just drive this and come home anytime," he said with a warm smile. The car Dad got for me was an SUV from a famous foreign brand, and he even arranged a parking spot near my condo. I couldn't believe it, and I laughed in disbelief. Later, when I was driving downtown, I reached into my pocket, found the car key, and pressed the button. The lights flashed in all directions. Just then, I heard a familiar voice calling out from behind. "What's with the car?" I turned to see Brandon, my husband, who hadn't been home in a while. It felt like we were living separate lives. I was speechless as he looked at the car with a smug expression. "Ah, I see. A gift from your parents, right?" Every time I faced Brandon, I struggled to find my voice, but I was tired of feeling that way. "Brandon, don't you care anymore? Do you even care about me?" I managed to say, gathering my courage. Then Brandon said something shocking. "Are you just realizing now? Did you really think I loved you all this time? It's ridiculous how hopeful you are." His dry laugh rang in my ears. Something inside me snapped, and I blurted out, louder than usual, "Then why did you marry me?" "Wow, really? You're going to be that cold about it?" I couldn't believe what Brandon was saying. "So marrying me was just a meal ticket for you, huh? And now you want the car too because it's wasted on me? That's just great." Brandon didn't seem to care about how hurtful his words were. And if you say no, we're getting divorced. Without me, you'll never find another man. So think about it." With those words, Brandon left without a second thought, leaving me feeling angry and heartbroken, my head pounding with a headache. I sat in the driver's seat for a while, trying to calm down. Eventually, I called my Aunt Elin for advice. A few days later, I agreed to the divorce and moved back in with my parents. They welcomed me with open arms, and life started to feel peaceful again. But that peace was short-lived. One afternoon, Brandon showed up at my parents' house with his parents. They sat down in the living room, and Brandon's father spoke up in a stern tone. "We're here to talk about our son's divorce. It's urgent." When drafting the divorce papers, Margareta warned Brandon, "If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll use my parents' connections at the university to ruin your future. It wouldn't be hard to damage the career of a junior registrar if their daughter complains." Brandon truly loved Margareta. Her behavior was too harsh. It's clear she was trying to intimidate him. "We could easily challenge the divorce," Brandon's father said, feeling deceived by Margareta. Behind her plain appearance, she's actually a mean and greedy woman. Poor Brandon. I heard she paid him to stay away. She must have had other men over. We need to go to family court and claim that Brandon was threatened by his wife. But if there's a proper apology, things might change. For example, if Margareta gives up that car she's driving, it might help smooth things over. Brandon and his parents remained silent, just listening to their parents' protests. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Mom went to answer it. Ellen appeared behind Mom as she came back to the living room. "Sorry I'm late. How's the discussion going?" Brandon's family had met Ellen once at my wedding. "What are you doing here? It's rude to barge in like that. We're busy right now. Outsiders should leave," Brandon's mother objected. No, don't be like that. You've heard about Brandon's divorce, right? How would an outsider like you know about that? I had been informed by my brother earlier. I couldn't miss such an important moment for my dear niece, Ellen said, offering a reassuring glance. "You're probably here to stop the divorce or for money. Can you still say that after seeing this?" Ellen pulled out a stack of documents from her bag, laid them out on the table, and showed them to everyone. "I hired a detective to look into this. It turns out Brandon has been cheating on Margareta with multiple women despite being married. He hardly came home because of it. He took advantage of Margareta's kindness and even asked her for money. That's ridiculous. I was just busy with my research at the university. When I did come home, we ate together and went on trips, right? We were like any other married couple, right, Margareta? Say something." "Brandon, you don't need to defend yourself. We'll handle this. It's not your fault. We understand," his father reassured him. "That's right. These documents from who knows where are surely lies. Our Brandon would never cheat. He's such a kind and outstanding son," his mother protested. "You might be kind to your parents, but that kindness seems to end there. Like father, like son." "Now, Brandon's mother, take a look at these photos," Ellen said, pulling out a picture from the documents. "I recently stayed at a hotel for a business meeting and saw Nicholas there. He was with another woman, looking very cozy. So I had the detective look into Nicholas too. The results were just as I expected. Do you understand now?" Brandon's mother's face went pale as she grabbed the documents and examined them closely. "What is this, Nicholas? How long have you been doing this? It's all lies, isn't it, Veronica? Stop looking. Give me that." Nicholas, looking panicked, tried to snatch the documents, but it was too late. Veronica, distraught, confronted Nicholas. "You've been cheating on me. The car you wanted so badly was for her in these photos, wasn't it?" No matter how hard Nicholas tried to calm her down, Veronica wouldn't listen. The discussion about Brandon's divorce was forgotten as Veronica stormed out of the house, crying, with Nicholas following after her. Left behind, Brandon said, "Hey, wait, what about me?" and followed them out in confusion. The rest of us were left in stunned silence for a while, but Aylin had a satisfied look on her face, winking at me. Later, Aylin told me that Brandon's parents did end up getting divorced. "You won't fall for such a terrible man again. Let's make you more attractive. I'll teach you everything about grooming yourself as a woman." Despite her busy schedule, Ellen visited me often and took me to various places like meals and shopping trips. During that time, I learned a lot from her. A year after the divorce, I made the decision to go to graduate school. I worked hard to improve myself, focusing on my studies. Time passed quickly, and one day, I heard someone call my name at a street intersection. I turned around to see Brandon. It's been a while. You've changed a lot, haven't you? At first, I didn't even recognize him. In Brandon's eyes, the woman standing before him was no longer the plain ex-wife he knew, but had transformed into an incredibly beautiful and attractive woman. Meanwhile, Brandon had fallen on hard times due to the scandal of his parents' divorce. It seemed he was no longer attending graduate school. His parents, Nicholas and Veronica, had decided to stop providing him with financial support because of the trouble he caused. He was struggling to afford his tuition and living expenses, far from the carefree life he once enjoyed. The women who used to be interested in him had left him one by one. The former glory he once had vanished in an instant, and now he found himself face to face with his ex-wife, who seemed to be a completely different person. As Brandon was about to suggest catching up, a man approached and asked, "Sorry for the wait. Are you a friend of Margarita's?" It was Leonard, the man I was currently dating. Wow, that guy is really handsome, isn't he? He's so tall. Could he be a model? Commented a group of women nearby, looking at Leonard. He's someone from my past, but it's okay. We're finished talking. Let's go, shall we? Leonard said, taking my hand and briefly acknowledging Brandon. Brandon stood there, stunned, as Leonard led me away by the hand. Without a second thought for Brandon, Leonard and I walked towards the crosswalk, and I didn't look back, keeping my gaze straight ahead as we left.